the assignment that I had in internal affairs was a prosecutorial role. They told me that it wasn't. I like to tend to think that it wasn't, but here I am in front of a 3-panel member. I'm representing the chief of police, and I'm going heads up against a defense attorney, prominent, top notch, who's representing their client.
Mm-hmm.
And
The officer or the public?
yeah, no, it's the officer.
Yeah.
So you have an accused,
Private attorney.
you have
Oh,
union
those are
attorney,
sharks.
union
Yeah.
attorney, right?
Okay.
And I'm the prosecuting. I'm representing the chief.
Yeah.
My job is to present all this evidence, provide all this testimony from witnesses, and you have to make a decision whether this officer is guilty or not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
We believe is guilty, and here are the reasons why. And that was my job. And a lot of my cases were false statements, dishonesty, accusing a cop of lying. That's the ultimate sin.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Purpose Over Pleasure podcast. Today we have an interesting guest, a blast from the past. Thanks to the Wise Nuts podcast. Shout out to you guys. I ended up seeing an old friend of mine, and invited him here. Thanks for being here, Marlon. Why don't you do me the pleasure and introduce yourself to my viewers and listeners?
Well, first and foremost, why don't you do me the pleasure and kind of remind me where we actually met?
Okay, let's go back to 2017.
It was
2018?
2017,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there was an incident where
It
I
was an-
actually
it wa-
saw you, and I want to say I was working officer rep section. We'll talk a little bit about
Yeah.
my experience, but
Good
man,
old
you brought.
LAPD.
I will say this: when you got a hold of me, I was telling my girlfriend, I go, man, I know this guy, I know his face, I know him, but I can't put the face with where we actually met. So I really appreciate you inviting me to your podcast, man. Thanks for thanks for the invite. I appreciate
Thanks for
it.
being here. I appreciate that. Like I said, it's always you back then
Mm-hmm.
left a very good impression in my memory. Right. Well, first of all, you're a talker. You're a phenomenal talker.
Thank you.
But I never sensed any kind of bullshit out of you. You were upfront and honest, and even after you had to transfer, in my case, had to go to a different investigator, and that shit continued for years after that.
Right.
I never forgot you, man.
Thank you,
Never
man.
forgot you. So thanks for everything you did for me back then. And the incident was it was that first ever to be released after the LAPD's policy came out that all the categorical critical incidents, shootings, all that stuff needs to go on YouTube. My incident was the first one where we had a use of force. Of course, it'll be the first one.
Of course,
and
it'll
of
be
course
the
it'll be
first
Newton.
one. And
right?
yeah, at all
Out of all
places.
divisions, it'll be
Yeah.
Newton. Yeah.
Interesting you say that, because that particular incident, you being the first, and for all of you that don't really recall about the landmark incident of George Floyd, there's a lot of reform, a lot of reformation, in police work, right? Bridging these gaps with the community, et cetera, et cetera. But one of those is the Assembly Bill, where I want to say it's 1421. You can call my bullshit on that, but it requires every agency in the state of California to release to the community critical incidents. OISs being the most, because those what happens
Those
the
are
most,
the juicy
officer involved
ones.
shootings.
Everybody wants to see those.
And so exactly, and so what ends up happening is, I want to say it's anywhere between, I think it's no more than 45 days, but within those 45 days, you have to let the public know.
Yeah.
And you guys were the first.
Our incident was the test bunny, right? Of all incidents first for LAPD. So there was a pressure of not only is this the first incident, not only is there all eyes on us right now, but also what happens. Whatever LAPD does, usually a lot of other small departments implement, replicate, and follow.
Correct.
So I remember when it happened to us, everybody was like on their toes, like this has to go like paper perfect.
Right, textbook.
Yeah, textbook, right. Now everybody's like, it's automated. They say the same thing on the video. The process is the same. They have their reels and cuts.
Yeah.
Like, but back then it was like, everybody's like, what are we doing? Type of thing.
And just on a side note, have you ever wondered how we in law enforcement always preach transparency, right?
Yeah.
And I will, obviously, I'm an LAPD alum, but I really always kind of challenge not just LAPD, but just law enforcement agencies when we say, hey, we're going to be transparent with the public and let you know about this critical incident, right? And we do a good job. I'm not going to say that we don't do a good job, but haven't you ever wondered that once you release that incident, right, we show you the radio call, the call for service, we show you the body-worn video, we show you the weapon, we show you the officers, right?
Yeah.
But after that, you ever wonder what the outcome was? Yeah,
Unknown.
right. And I think we should hold, at least in my opinion, is that we should hold accountable the public as well as us, right? Hey, we'll tell you about it, but we're not going to tell you the outcome and the result of this OIS,
Yeah.
right? We don't do that. We don't go back 9 months or a year later and say, hey, remember that incident that we, showed in a community briefing is what they call it. Well, let me tell you what the outcome was. The officers were found in policy regarding to, as it relates to the deadly force, but in the tactics, these were the kind of issues. And you know what? We got some extensive training for it. Have a nice day. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
We don't do that. But by the same token, if you flip it, the coin, if you will, the public doesn't call back and say, hey, whatever happened to that OIS that you guys told us about almost a year ago?
Yeah. I think whatever you just suggested should be implemented because it's fair, but I don't think nobody would care because it's not the juicy stuff.
Exactly.
They want that little 2-3 minute long video, 'cause
And that's
all
it.
and that's it. Like in my case, it was years and years of going back and forth, and then depositions, and then this and that, and the attorney that was representing the case
Uh-huh.
for the public, right?
Uh-huh.
That guy, such a sleazeball. After George Floyd thing happened,
Uh-huh.
and he was caught plagiarizing the case because he took our case and
Mm-hmm.
he copied and pasted, because our use of force was sort of in ways similar to George Floyd's.
Uh-huh.
He copied and pasted a few paragraphs from George Floyd's case and put it into ours and refiled it again. Because I think one of the family members passed away, so they have to
Got it.
represent now the sister and the mom instead of sister, mom, and father, because father passed away.
Right.
And so like our city attorney ended up catching him. They're like, why are you plagiarizing a whole different like
Yeah.
attorney's case? So that was scandalous. And then just hours and days of depositions and all that. That was not the juicy stuff. That was like
Yeah.
the stuff that nobody wants to know and hear, and us appealing their decision and back and forth. And at the end, what happened? They settled.
Yeah.
So public's not gonna care.
Yeah.
They're not gonna sit there and follow. You can't even describe all that on 2-3 minutes of a video, right? They're gonna be like, well, who cares? We don't give a shit. We just want to see the video of a guy getting beat down or shot by a
Exactly.
cop, and
we
that's
want
it.
to sensationalize it.
Sensationalize, yeah.
Yeah, that's
so the thought is great. I agree with you. Not gonna go
Yeah.
viral. You already know, brother.
Absolutely. So yeah, man. Look, 24 years LAPD. I retired. It's going to be July. Will be 3 years, and I'm really enjoying my journey now more than ever before. What I will say is that LAPD has afforded me so much success to the point where I'm teaching. Right, I got these California post-certified course. I'm teaching internal affairs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching officer-involved shooting courses with Savage Training Group. And I run a podcast. We'll talk about that later.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The podcast is it's a blessing. It's the content has a lot to do with discipline, has a lot to do with internal affairs, and you and I can agree that is a topic that is so taboo. Not many people want to talk about it, and for whatever reason in our culture, we tend to hold it. We don't know how to explain it without thinking that the department, oh my God, if I say something, the department's, going to jam me up for it. And more than anything, what I've learned is when you start talking about the process, right, which turns out to be the penalty for the most part, is it is a mental wellness issue that before I came on the job 25 years ago, it wasn't even heard of. You wouldn't think that you going through a disciplinary process would really, get on your mind, man, and stress the hell out of you. People don't know
it
that.
does. It does.
And there's been cases, unfortunately, where I know one in particular in my beloved LAPD that the officer was waiting for the outcome of his internal affairs complaint investigation, and he was facing, I suppose, some serious allegations of misconduct, and he ended up committing suicide. Waiting for this hearing, so we have a hearing. We'll talk about that later on. But my point is that this podcast gives you that platform to have that conversation, which is important because it's kind of therapeutic. It has a sense of validation. Like, hey, I know I did 30 years, and I know that people thought that I was this great supervisor, but let me tell you about that one time, I got jammed up by IA, and IA is this, that's just this evil
Yeah.
entity, we're
Yeah.
the Rat Squad. We have all of these nicknames.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought to myself, you know what? Why don't I put it on a social platform and see if we can detach that negative stigma? So that has been a great journey. Teach and consult. You know what? I grab an IA and get to do a biopsy with a fine tooth comb and let you know if that internal affairs investigation is either good or it's got more holes than a Swiss cheese.
That part is important, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
This is why I think you guys, for one of my fellow officers are watching, reach out to this guy or whoever it is you can find that does the same practice as him, who's not necessarily part of the department at the moment, because it gives you a sense of comfort. Like if I was, in trouble with IA, and I would not necessarily go straight. I would be hesitant to go to like the department, represented or assigned IA guy. I'll go to you. You already quit.
Appreciate that. Yeah.
You did your thing. Now you're doing this out of love for your craft, out of your practice, or even if it's out of your business. You're doing it for you and your own purpose, not because you were assigned, because you got the spot. You're assigned. Now that's your job to do it. To do.
Right.
No, you can do anything else you want right
Correct.
now.
Yeah.
You finished your law enforcement career.
Yep.
So to officers like myself and stuff, I would feel more comfortable hitting up somebody like you versus going to an assigned person, for example.
Yeah, no, it's a service that unfortunately, what I've seen lately is and it's just unfortunately it's the belly and the beast. You're super busy. You're an attorney that works for the union, right? And you have all these cases, and he or she doesn't really have the time to grab that internal affairs. Well, of course you're going to read it, but you get to actually listen to the audio of all the interviews, right? Witness interviews, you're accused, and start listening and seeing what the actual paraphrase summary statement.
And it's a lot sometimes.
And it's a lot, yeah. It's 2 hours, and you're looking, and you're
pages
going,
pages,
yeah, and you're going, wait a minute, hold on a second.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
exactly what he said. So it gives the adjudicator, when they're getting ready to recommend penalty or adjudicate the findings, right? Sustained meaning it occurred, unfounded meaning it didn't occur at all, not sustained. Some agencies use that, and then all of a sudden they just think to themselves, well, this is the tone and this is what I have. But if you actually have a biopsy attached to it, with the declarant, myself, and saying, hey man, this is what they didn't do. We are under the belief that no stone goes unturned and that IO didn't do this, didn't do that, and then procedural best practices. So yeah, man, it's super important because I really feel that when you start talking about police functions and police work, yeah, we get sometimes the media paints us in a negative light.
Sometimes.
Right.
All the time.
Or, yeah.
95% of the time.
95% of the time, but believe it or not, about 85% of the time, we law enforcement officers are our worst enemies.
Oh, 100. We'll talk about that for sure,
And
bro.
hypocrisy
Oh yeah.
is at an ultimate high level when it comes to our profession. And then so when you think that this is an IA and I'm the investigating officer and here's my product, well, you know what? Let me take a look at it to see how really good is your product.
Yeah. One thing I realized for sure, right, before I even went into business the way I am now, LAPD, whatever PD, 3-4 letter you put it to it, it's nothing but a business. It's a business. It is a service provided for money, right? Okay, maybe funded not directly by the consumer, by the public and itself and the government, but it's business in exchange for the product or service, right? And the service that we offer is obviously police work, police service. It's basic customer service.
Correct.
Okay, so if you look at it from that perspective, right, then going deeper, okay, since it's a business, then as any other business, as job assignments and responsibilities, it's a 9 to 5. So human factor comes into play, right? You love your craft, right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure not every IA officer you've worked with loves what they did. Okay, some of them probably got the spot because they want to get off patrol and sit in the cubicle and sit inside and wear a suit instead of a heavy belt and a vest.
Yes.
So now imagine, this is what my issue was with this, right? And I've had the experience, granted, I come across you and then the other sergeant. My experience overall was with IA was good in LAPD and in the department after that. But I know firsthand some individuals who I've looked at. I was like, I do not want that person representing me or even looking at my case. Because I can tell you right now, by the way he's dressed, talks, and walks, that for that person, they already hate their life, and they're not gonna represent me with my best interest.
Right.
To the to the chain of command.
100%.
So, and that, my friend, is a scary feeling for an officer.
Yeah.
For a patrol cop like me, that's a scary feeling.
What you know what? Spot on. I will say that a lot of sergeants. I shouldn't say a lot, but there is sergeants out there that have a different agenda to get this job in internal affairs. Some agencies
Say how it is, man.
Yeah.
The
No,
agenda, a lot of
yeah.
times the agenda is, I'm just going to pass this and move on to the next one.
Yeah,
And
well,
the next one.
Yeah,
okay?
it's interesting because when I do, when I teach this internal affairs course, we do ask. The majority of students are sergeants who are beginning their tour in internal affairs. Some say, "Hey, man, I got voluntold. Like, dude, I don't want to fucking be here,
Exactly.
but you know what? I'm here."
Mm-hmm.
Some have said, "Well, it's a feather in the cap. It's my way of
Mm-hmm.
promoting and getting to the next level. So it's self-serving."
Yeah.
Right? And what I will tell you, and I got asked this, and I don't get asked a lot because, I'm a host, and I do go and do guest appearances, but there's been a couple of times where I've had myself thinking, shit, dude, why did I really go to internal affairs? And at the time that I got interested in going into internal affairs, I was at officer rep section. So let me just kind of explain to your audience that LAPD is such a big organization, it's such a big machine that we actually have union reps as full-time jobs. So for all these other agencies that go to their union to say, hey, man, you know what, I got this IA or I got this problem, grievance, whatever, you go to your union rep, right? Well, in internal affairs, you have a whole unit, a section called officer rep section, and our job is to defend cops. You call me, you say, hey, Sarge, I got this IA, it's sustained, it's a bunch of bullshit. I want to appeal it or I want to write a response, a Skelly response. Sure, not a problem. Let me take a look at it. And that's what we do. When we roll out to all these critical incidents, the attorney gets paid the big bucks to represent the shooting officer or officers only. Well, you know this. If you go to a scene of an OIS, dude, there's a lot. I mean, that whole process is...
Yep.
It's an overnighter. It's a 10, 15-hour process minimum. And the rep from officer rep section has to prepare and represent all the precipient witness, the people who were substantially involved. So there'll be the partner, the sergeant that showed up. We have the resources of getting an airship. So you have to represent and prep with the tactical flight officer, with the pilot officer, and everybody. Well, who saw it? We did, Sarge. Okay, you guys are going to get read. What about who heard it? We did. Who saw and heard it? We did. So we cast a big wide net and we try to kind of stream it to see who actually is substantially involved. That can give us a really good picture about what happened. But that whole process is where I got a lot of my experience with these critical incidents. And so all that being said, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I had a chance to do that twice, and I also worked in internal affairs. So that's where I got a lot of my experience, and it just dawned on me in class where we asked these questions and what motivated you. So when I was in ORS, and you might not know this, but well, of course you know this. When you get promoted to a sergeant, you're a sergeant 1 and you have 3 stripes. The culture is you got to get a rocker. Like you have to get a sergeant 2 spot. That's like a promotion to us.
Yeah.
So we sergeants, when you make it, you're like, okay, dude, where am I going to get my rocker? Like, where's this spot so I can get that upgrade, that promotion? Well, they're very minimal. There's a assistant watch commander spot in the station to be a watch commander. There's a spot over in community relations. There's a spot in vice. So they're very hard to come by.
Spots, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's just take one LAPD division, Van Nuys, for example. Van Nuys got like 500 officers, and they have like probably close to 80 to 100 sergeants. Well, if there's only one spot, and you're from the outside putting in, you're not going to get it. They're going to go on the inside because you motivate, and I'm sure there's some good sergeants that deserve it. And so one of the avenues to get that rocker is internal affairs. And so,
And here's the stigma.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
he went to IA
Hence
to
the
get his
stigma.
rocker.
You're
Yep,
right.
Yep.
And believe it or not, defending cops kind of gave me a different lens to realize that, dude, all these IA investigations, the people in IA, it's called the dark side, and all these nicknames. But some of these investigations are shitty, bro. I mean, they're like half baked. And so when I got there, when they advertised it, I wasn't really so much thinking about the actual job. I was thinking more about, hey, I want to get my rocker because it's pension based in case, later on I'm going to be retiring at a higher pension. But when I got there, it's definitely where I learned the most. Hands down, putting on these border rights, these hearings, these tribunal, court type of hearings, prosecuting cops for really serious allegations of misconduct is where I got a lot of my experience. But now that I reflect on it, is I just always thought to myself, we need to talk about this because we just don't. It's a very hush hush type of topic.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, how many years do you have total in IA?
I did my first tour was I did 5 there, close to 5. So I did 5 in internal affairs, and I did 2 tours in officer rep section. That's how much I love defending cops.
Yeah.
And then before I retired, I was at we had the MTA contract, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
took the contract over the sheriffs for all the buses and
Yeah,
trains.
yeah. I hated that thing.
I was I was the complaint coordinator
Oh God, that is.
for the entire city. So every single public
man.
complaint throughout the entire city of Los Angeles, if it happened on a train,
Yeah.
platform train, or a bus,
I hated those.
it came
working
to my
those.
desk.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 2 years before I retired. I retired as a
Man, they should have given you bonus just for that one.
yeah.
Because
That's
that
a
in
hazard
itself,
pay, bro.
Yeah, that in itself was a hazard pay, mental, bump, whatever it needs to call it, man. I hated those gigs. I worked a lot of those before I left LA, and I hated like 99 out of 100 of them. Like only once I
Yeah.
remember I got a chill gig, but in just walking on your feet, you're always on your feet. I used to hate wearing the cover, man.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like, I'm like if I wanted to wear a cover, I would have been NYPD. If I wanted to wear tan and green, I would have been sheriffs. I want the good old like I'm the generation of cops. This is a funny story. Now this always gets people laughing, right? We all come from different generations of cops based on the movies we watch, right?
Yes.
So what's your cop movie?
Oh,
growing
dude,
up?
Colors,
What
of course.
Okay, I
Colors.
figured. I didn't want to tell you your age, man.
Yeah.
I didn't want to tell
I'm
you
out
your
there.
age.
I'm out
I,
there,
I was
bro.
gonna spit it out, but okay,
Yeah.
you said yourself.
Yeah.
Colors, right? So there's Colors. There's Adam. What does it call it? The old even before Colors.
Adam 12.
Adam 12,
Yeah,
right?
the show.
And then there's and the Watch
And the Watch
generation.
is badass.
Now it's the Rookie generation, which I hate that show, right? The SWAT generation, that show. You know what generation I am, bro?
Talk to me.
Training Day. The most fucked up
Yeah.
cop movie ever made, dude. With Denzel Washington. Training. That's
Yes.
my generation of
That's-
cops.
that's your
what,
jam right
That's
there.
what I used to watch.
Yeah.
Bro. Like, I'm gonna be a cop.
You're like,
not
oh,
like Lonzo. Yeah, not like Lonzo.
Not like Lonzo.
But that's me, dude. So we always laugh at me and my friends like, man, we're a fucked up generation of cops because we grew up on Training Day. So before it was good, and now it's kind of watered down, weak, like the Rookie and the SWAT. Man, when I look
Yeah.
at it, and me as a firearms and tactics instructor myself, when I look at those shows, like it makes me want to puke, man. I was like, that is not how. And in one day,
Yeah.
you save a baby, get into
Yeah.
a shooting, climb,
No code 7,
no
bro.
code 7, nothing. And next thing you know, 3 months in, you're an FTO. I was like, that part is true. You can become an FTO in
Yeah,
some
you-
departments,
oh,
like
in a heartbeat.
right after probation.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? You're in. Here's your
Yeah,
stripes.
exactly. So for me, I deviated a little bit. So my thing was, what I was gonna tell you is this: in our job, in our profession, and this is what I think is important to know for all cops out there. There's certain things about our job that are very intimate to us, right? Growing up working as a cop, there's a handful of cops that I saw that went on social media, right? And decided to talk about police work and show what they do and take photos and videos at like traffic stops, and which is ridiculous. I think there's certain aspects of police work that are very, very intimate to us and should not be shown to public. Not because we're liars or we're cheaters, no. But it's, for example, I don't think the public necessarily needs to know what it's like to go respond to a call of a dead 6 months old, like I had to, right? Or somebody who shot themselves in the head, while the family is next door, right? The father who took his own life because the stress was so much, or the IA, right? That part of it is between us, right?
Yes.
Not to say not the part that don't tell we're gonna lie about it or hide the information, but there's certain things about this job that it's intimate to us, man, because
Yeah.
this job can physically kill you,
Yeah.
but it's emotionally and spiritually, mentally draining. So certain parts of our job, the public will not understand.
Right.
I can't go back and tell them, you know what it's like to have to go and open the bag with a dead 6 month old.
Yeah.
They would understand. That will stick. I will never forget that. That picture will never leave me.
Yeah.
My first suicide, my first traffic accident where the person died,
Yeah.
my first drive-by shooting with that glossy stare in his eyes when his
Yeah.
soul left his body. You never forget your first.
No.
I never forget my first. Those are the things that belong to us and stay with us, and sometimes, unfortunately, they stay with us forever.
Yeah.
So, I think certain parts about this job, the public just can't comprehend.
Right.
They won't be able to understand. Only cops understand that. And do you think there's certain parts about IA aspect of police work that the public, and your job is to make everything clear and transparent to the public, right? Between officers and command
Correct.
staff and the public. Is there part of IA that you think the public, not necessarily we should not know, but they would not understand?
Yeah. What comes to mind is this complete misunderstanding of what you believe to be misconduct, right? People, I should say the public, right, loves to make a complaint about a cop. Hey, you know what?
Tell me about it.
He was an asshole, and the way he stared at me and took off his sunglasses, I was just really offended.
Yeah. Pull me over because I'm black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I had a lot of those.
Right, you pull me over, you're like, dude, what are you talking
Your
about?
windows were tinted.
First of all, yeah, number one, I didn't see you until I actually
I actually
pulled
saw
up
you, dude.
and you rolled down the window. So make me understand where I pulled you over because
I had
of
one
race.
of those.
Yeah, of course, bias policing's huge. So that's where the public I hold accountable for putting a police officer through a system, through a process by which some don't deserve it, all because you were just misunderstood about the contact, right? And the public doesn't care. To your point earlier, I'll give you an example. When you make a public complaint, not just with Los Angeles Police Department, with any department,
Yeah.
you're going to get some correspondence. In other words, you as a complainant, Mr. Johnson,
Yeah.
right? You come in the front desk to any police agency today, you have an expected outcome, right? At least you want to know, hey, what happened? You'd be surprised. There has been, so when an LAPD internal affairs complaint investigation is completed, adjudicated the whole nine, you send a letter to the actual complainant. 8 months later, sometimes a year later, well, it's definitely not over a year, but let's say 8 months to a year later, right? And they get the letter, you really think that they're actually going to call back and say, you know what? I want to talk to Sergeant Marachi about this complaint that I made a year ago. You know how many times I've gotten phone calls for the hundreds of letters that we sent out? I think I got one. It was a USC law student who wanted to know, I want to know what happened to him because he was kind of like an asshole. And so we had that conversation, right? Just because you thought he was an asshole doesn't make him, it doesn't define what misconduct is. You know what? You're in the middle of watching this fucking crazy ass fucking football game, and he's trying to tell you to move while you're crossing, on the substation right there in exposition, and you're getting all fucking butthurt about it.
Oh, yeah.
And you might get hit or something's going on, and then you think that he's being an asshole to you. Well, whether his disposition was what you believe to be an asshole, that's not misconduct. So that's the conversation we should be having. But the public does not care, to your point. They care when they make the complaint, but about 48 or 72 hours later, they shut it down. They don't care about that. And interesting, and I wanted to kind of touch a little bit about what you're saying about earlier, that we keep things, that would affect you for the rest of your life, your career. That's one of the questions I ask in my to all my guests. I ask worst incident in your career. Every single one of my shorts that you see on the podcast, my editor grabs worst incident in your career, and I ask it to your point. Not the public doesn't understand,
Mm-mm.
and you know what? More than anything is that if you want to become a police officer, guess what? This is what you're going to be facing. This is what you're going to be experiencing. And I've had 30-year bro. I've had like ex command staff officers. I had the GOAT, Deputy Chief Mark Perez. He's been retired for a while now. He's got to be in his 60s, right? Mid 60s or early 60s. And I asked him, worst incident in your career? Dude, he goes, you know what? When I was a FTO in Southwest, way back, let me tell you about that radio call where I saw that kid drowning.
Yeah.
So my point is yes, we keep it to ourselves, but I think it's good to bring it out so that people know that it's not about dancing, at the local gym and doing TikTok cops and uniform. It's not about all
I
that
know exactly what you're really talking about.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, you're doing, you're an SRO. Hey, let me dance. You're
Yeah.
doing this, or you're
Yeah.
doing selfies, and you're doing. I mean, social media is
Yeah.
got them out there, which is interesting because we're going to be talking about that in our internal affairs course. It's part of the curriculum, social media, TikTok cops in uniform. But it's definitely a way of letting you know, hey, you know what? You decide to do this career. This is something you're going to be facing, and it's
Yeah.
going to stay with you for the rest of your life.
True, very true. My question to you was this: in your professional
Mhm.
career as an internal affairs officer,
Mhm.
right? Obviously, so us as cops, we have our own, worst one, two, top incidents that will haunt us forever, right?
Correct.
And hopefully, like I've actually done therapy, not only for myself, my childhood, my acute childhood trauma,
Mhm.
but also for the stuff, related to work.
Yeah.
You as an IA guy,
Mhm.
right? Talk to me about like the worst or one of the worst incidents that you have to face and represent because your best interest is to represent an officer, right? And then did you have an incident or did you have an incident where on paper it looked this way, but once you start digging in and doing your work, which is what you're good at, and you end up
Mhm.
uncovering stuff that you maybe thought there's a lot of discrepancies here.
Yeah. Well, what I will tell you is when I was the advocate, right? I was pretty much the assignment that I had in internal affairs was a prosecutorial role. They told me that it wasn't. I like to tend to think that it wasn't, but here I am in front of a 3-panel member. I'm representing the chief of police, and I'm going heads up against a defense attorney, prominent, top notch, who's representing their client.
Mm-hmm.
And
The officer or the public.
yeah, no, it's the officer.
Yeah.
So you have an accused,
Private attorney.
you have
Oh, those
union
are
attorney,
sharks.
union
Yeah.
attorney, right?
Okay.
And I'm the prosecuting. I'm representing
Yeah.
the chief.
Yeah.
My
yeah.
job is to present all this evidence, provide all this testimony from witnesses, and you have to make a decision whether this officer is guilty or not guilty.
Mhm.
We believe is guilty, and here are the reasons why.
Yeah.
And that was my job. And a lot of my cases were false statements, dishonesty, uh, accusing a cop of lying. That's the ultimate sin, I should say the cardinal sin as a law enforcement officer. And so out of 30 of these hearings, I actually had 5 that were actually prosecuted and they got terminated. They found them guilty and you're gone. And you and I can agree we don't want
No.
bad apples. We don't want liars.
No.
You cut corners and you're lying. This is not the profession for you. And that probably goes for any other profession. With that being said, I didn't really get that feeling about the 5 because I knew, hey man, there's plenty of evidence here, and from the get go,
So you were confident.
I was confident,
okay.
locked on, and say, you know what, this dude's done. We're gonna prove that
What
they
was the
actually
case?
lied.
Like, what? Give me an example.
I'll give you.
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I
we
know
can
you're
talk.
retired, but also
Yeah,
like
we can
IA,
talk.
there's different regulations. Like, can you talk about stuff? Can you
Yeah.
not?
So,
Yeah.
gosh, let me preface by saying that anything that you do off duty, the scope, bro,
Okay.
is like real real micro.
Yeah.
Like the department's going to be like, okay, I'm fucking checking your shit out, like
Mm-hmm.
to see how inappropriate or how bad it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you lied, it's even worse.
Yeah.
But when you have an incident and you're facing alleged serious misconduct like dishonesty, false statement, misleading, perjury, whatever, right? If it's on duty and you're carrying out the essential job functions of a police officer, I will say the department's pretty lenient, in my experience, has been flexible and lenient towards that accused employee. Why?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of shit that happens, bro, out in the streets. You and I know that a use of force is not textbook.
Never.
You can be taught in the academy, oh, let me, hey, firm grip,
Yeah.
take down, body weight. Oh, and put your knee over here in the lower part of his back. Okay, that's great. But that shit out in the streets, that doesn't happen that way at all. You got all these.
Violence is never. Only in movies it's choreographed.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
In real life,
Right.
it's never.
So we
beautiful.
all have to agree that there's going to be a lot of deviation. Some of that deviation is going to be substantial. The question is, can you justify or explain, why you deviated so much from what we taught you? Oh, and by the way, the last time you taught me something was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're both to be held accountable for that. But my point is that when you have those kind of cases, I didn't think about the 5. If I've done 30 of these hearings, I always thought to myself, what about the other 25? They didn't even belong at this level. And I think, that's just me, is the reason why internal affairs gets such a negative stigma is because we put this person through the fucking ringer, bro.
Mm-hmm.
We put them through a process that actually became the punishment because they waited for years to get to their day. But with that being said, yeah, I have one. Probably the one that sticks out the most is that I had an officer who had. You'll appreciate this too, and you'll appreciate this because you're gonna think to yourself, dude, are you serious? You had a B in court at CCB, Criminal Courts Building downtown.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
210 West Temple.
Yeah.
Got it. Right? But he also had a traffic court that afternoon, 1945 South Hill Street.
Okay.
You follow me so far, right?
Yeah.
Morning
yeah.
time, afternoon time.
Uh-huh.
It was on a Friday. So he goes to his B in court,
Okay.
CCB,
Yep.
room 220 or whatever,
Yep.
and he checks in
Yep.
with his partner.
Been there, done
and
that.
pretend you've been there and done this. You pretend you're DA, and he says, "Hey, you know what? You don't mind if I stick around? I really want to stay here. Because I got this afternoon court, and I'm good being here.
Yeah.
And if you need me, I'll stay. So,
Yeah.
so in other words, DA, take your time dispoing this particular case.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you need me to testify, I'll testify on this prelim. But I forgot what it was.
Yeah.
But obviously he's there.
Yeah.
She goes, oh, okay, yeah, no, not a problem. So
Mm-hmm.
she goes and talks to to her colleague, right, the public defender, and she comes back like around 10, and she says, hey, you know what? We had an agreement. We have a plea bargain. You no longer need it. You're dismissed. You're good to go. Well, what this officer proceeded to do was to call the traffic court and the traffic liaison, because there's a sworn liaison that checks you in.
Uh-huh.
And she says, he goes, traffic liaison, Officer Johnson, how can I help you? He says, well, I'm Officer so-and-so, and I want you to know that I'm going to be in here at CCB room 220 for the rest of the day. So she writes, this is the traffic liaison, CCB room 220, under his name. So, because he called and he says, I'm not showing up.
Because criminal takes precedence over traffic. If you
Criminal
have them
takes
both on the
precedence over
same day.
traffic. However,
Yeah.
he was dismissed.
Yeah.
But here's what the numbnuts does. He calls the
Oh, it
DA's
gets
office.
better.
He calls the
Okay.
DA
Uh-huh.
and says, hey, I was wondering if you can cover for me because I just got done calling traffic court saying that I'm going to be in this case. And if you don't mind, kind of covering for me because I really don't want to go to... So while he was mumbling and saying that, she's like, what? What are you asking me to do? Are you serious? Is that what you're asking? She's like, you got to be kidding me. How could you even ask me about doing something like that? And then he begins to backpedal like, well, no, that's not what I asked. She hangs up. She hangs up and huddles with round tables with her bosses. And the bosses said, yeah, that doesn't look good at all. In fact, kind of lied. That ain't great. So write it up. So she write up some memo and sends it to the Brady Alert unit in the DA's office. So the Brady Alert unit looks at the memo and says, yeah, this is good to go. And that memo gets sent to the chief of police. Chief of police forwards it to internal affairs and it lands on my desk. And so I proceeded to put on the border rights hearing, and I brought in the DA to testify. I brought in the court liaison to testify. And it didn't look for him, and he ended up getting terminated, dude. So not so much the process and not so much, standing tall and saying, wow, he deserved because he lied and cut corners. More than anything, what I was concerned, because I am very empathetic, man. The job as an associate advocate in internal affairs, putting on these hearings, didn't quite suit my personality because I'm very witty, I'm very positive, I love to laugh, I have the riz, like they say now, and it's kind of hard to have riz when when your job is to pretty much tell these board members, hey, on behalf of the chief of police, this person's a fucking liar. Here's all this evidence. And so for me, it was an emotional roller coaster, bro. And yeah, he ended up getting terminated. But what I asked to this very day is that, how come something so little, why? Why would you do something like that? Because if you're willing and able to cut corners to not be in court, like he didn't want to drive and spent the rest of the afternoon. And my understanding is I think he had to go to Vegas. I think he took off. Ooh. Young officer and probably took off and wanted to go party. But if you're willing to do that in your responsibility as you have to be in court, imagine you being out in the streets cutting corners. That's the way I see it. I don't want to beat down this guy a lot, but yeah, man, that's one that really sticks out. You're like, so yeah, it was a false statement and they found him guilty and he got fired.
So you mentioned earlier, we are our own worst enemy. And that is true. Mm-hmm. That is true. And by all means, I think, well, first of all, let me acknowledge the fact that in any profession, there's good and there's bad people.
Correct.
Technically, I think there's certain professions that there's more bad apples than police work. And there's a million of us, there's like a million of us out there, right? Yeah. Nationwide. Dude, I think a good majority of cops, I would say comfortably, and I come from two departments, right? LAPD and the department after that. Majority of cops are good.
100%.
Just like I think nature versus nurture, people are born naturally just, at the very least neutral. It's the society that shapes us into assholes or decent people. Yeah. So I think majority of cops are still good and we do this job. Like I started this career not for the money, Eventually I left to a different department because I was like, okay, I'm not comfortable here and I bust my ass and I'm not appreciated and then I have this incident and investigation, blah blah blah. I was like, I'm done. I'm out. I had to make a decision, which was the best decision, and I ended up in a different department. And I'm happy. But for the most part, I think the problems happen and I've seen this a lot of times. When you work somewhere and you see that grumpy fucking cop that just hates his life and divorced and this captain's an asshole, this sergeant's an asshole, everybody's an asshole. Yeah. And then you find out from his peers, okay, that he used to be a hard charger and a good cop. Yeah. Like hooking and booking and getting dope and guns. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, what the fuck happened? Yeah. And then they tell you what happened. Oh, department pinched him once, twice, 3 times or something, put him on the bench, put him inside. And now you're thinking, well, for me, it was like, I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be that guy.
There's 2 types of asshole cops out there, natural born asshole, which I think the department's fault to even giving that person a gun and a badge. Yeah. And then there's the disgruntled, I can't wait to spend, this last few years and retire because I fucking hate everybody, including especially command staff. Yeah. But it used to be a good cop.
Yes.
And both are equally dangerous and the liability is huge. Point. But it's just I can't fix this guy's natural asshole. Should never been a cop. But this guy is man, you were done dirty. Yeah. And the LAPD did me a little dirty too. Yeah. My story, right? Everybody got cleared immediately. Yeah. and then got kicked back down. I don't
Of
want to name the
course.
commander's name. And she said, no, we can't have everybody clear. Find somebody at fault.
Yeah.
And I found that out years later, right? And they found us in fault for some bullshit, but
Yeah.
I don't care about that now. That happens too. You can't say it doesn't happen.
Oh, 100%.
Command staff is fucking
Oh,
eager about that
yeah.
too, because you know what the custom, the rockers, the bars, all that
100%.
stuff.
I've had a handful of command staff officers come on the podcast. One of them was my mentor, who was a retired commander, and he kept saying, "Yo, man, stop throwing me softball questions, bro. Come on, man. Throw me a hard one." I said, "Okay, you want a hard one? Is there a double standard?" And he's like,
Oh,
"Ooh, that's a good one."
you can't deny it when you're talking to a cop, though.
And he is old school.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he came on the job in 1977, male black, fully decorated, went through ups and downs. He goes, "You know what? I don't have any empirical data to prove one way or the other, but what I will tell you, yes, there is."
There is.
And so there
There is.
is. We can agree to that.
Yeah.
And we are our worst enemies is spot on. I think we talked about this earlier. Is hypocrisy is at an ultimate high in this profession, and I also want to go on the record to make sure we let your audience know that there is over, I want to say, north of 800,000 officers throughout the United States.
Yeah.
And there's about north of 18,000 police agencies throughout the United States. So when we're talking about the topic of internal affairs or getting done dirty, just know that it's a very, very small fraction, However,
The public loves that small fraction.
and they paint us,
Yeah,
George
yeah.
Floyd, psh,
Yeah, all cops are bad.
they all do that.
Yeah,
They all do that, And so hypocrisy runs what I've realized, and what I don't like, what doesn't matter what I like or don't like. I think where we go wrong, that I think we could do better, is if we're going to claim this thin blue line and we're this happy family, especially when holiday season comes around, Thanksgiving, potluck. Hey, Alex, Marlon, bring in your favorite dish. We're going to have it at the roll call room. You got the homemade pumpkin pie, the turkey. Oh, and by the way, on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, you guys get off early, man. You know what? And the watch, 12 o'clock. I know you get off at 3, but hey, you're a good worker. We're all one happy family. Thin blue line, you're getting off work early, right? And then comes Christmas. You wear the Santa, hat, take pictures, and you're doing toy drives, all that stuff. But hold on a second. I just found out that Alex and Marlon got an IA. You know what? I can't talk to you anymore. As a matter of fact, you're on the island all by yourself. I kind of have to disassociate myself with you. And God forbid, because LAPD is a big agency, right?
It's a big
Someone in Southeast that got an IA from Devon, they're not going to know in Devonshire, Mission, Van Nuys, or West Valley.
Yeah.
It kind of stays there. But can you imagine being in a small agency? If you get an IA in a small agency, when I say small, 50, maybe even 100, I'll probably go to even 150. Dude, everybody knows. Everybody knows. The rumors start to the next thing you know, you are like this wanted felon
Yeah. Yeah.
that the chief is thinking, going, dude, Alex and Marlon fucking went out there and, now they're the felons. And so that's where I think that we can fix this. We are our worst enemies. We do it all the time. Another example, there was, you just saw, I don't know if you watch Viral Incidents, there was this chainsaw. The man with a chainsaw inside.
Chainsaw.
There was a suspect. There was a suspect with a chainsaw inside an assisting living.
Okay. I haven't seen that one.
Viral. Right now, it's
Okay. I'll check it out.
fucking. It's popping
I'll check
off,
it out.
bro. Everywhere.
And?
It happened in Illinois, and here's the deal. He shows up, one-man unit. Okay, we're LAPD, dude. I mean, I don't know. Tactics are different when you have a one-man unit. Of course, he's asking and waiting for backup. He goes inside, dude, and he sees this guy with a chainsaw, dude. And he's acting crazy, saying, I just want to see my wife. He's getting all crazy. He deploys his taser, right? And you can tell he's a nervous wreck. He's like, put down that taser,
Chainsaw.
put down the chainsaw, put down the chainsaw. And I think at one point, you can tell that he's like, hey, when are you guys getting here? Because shit's about to pop off. And I want to say he transitions into lethal. So you kind of have a problem. So He waits until the suspect starts revving the chain to start up the chainsaw, and finally, and it starts up. Pop! He deploys
Taser,
the darts. He goes down. However, they weren't that effective because he gets up and starts running. Now you have fucking chaos in the middle of this assisted living home. You know, you got people there, patients with wheelchairs, and it ends up in an OIS. You know, KMA, OIS, bodies down. Yeah, maybe some crossfires, some issues. But, bro, everybody on social media is crucifying this officer. They're saying, quote unquote, things like, you shouldn't bring a taser to a chainsaw fight. That's been a great quote.
Wow.
What else have I heard? You know what? He shouldn't be on this job.
Oh, I love those when they
Yeah,
know how to
he
do a
shouldn't
job
be on
better
this
than
job.
us.
So then I asked myself, okay, let's talk about procedure here. So what you're saying is there was an OIS, and because of this OIS, he should be terminated. So in other words, thank you for doing what you think for the outcome. And here's the deal. The public, there's no outcry with the community. It's not like the community is sitting there going, huh, the cop is a piece of shit and he shouldn't have done that. If anything, the community and people on social media, these keyboard warriors are saying, hey, you know what? Fuck, dude, thank God they fucking killed the threat, right? They stopped the threat and he died.
He fat-fold.
Right, exactly. But these cops are just all these SWATologists and all these tacticians and people are just crucifying this guy. And I had to go in there and I say, look, rather than crucifying and bashing this guy, we should be praising him for doing a great job. You don't know if he's going to come into work after experiencing this trauma. He might say to the chief and say, you know what, sir, this job is just not for me. This was way too much for me, you know, and I'm just, you know what, I felt like this probably isn't the job for me. That could be an option, but to pass judgment on this guy and be so critical about his actions, don't do that, bro.
I stopped. So,
what do you think?
I think you're 100% true, and I've talked to like countless number of people who would ask me about different videos, and I was telling them, listen, I'll watch the video you're sending me, and I'll give you my opinion, but understand that my opinion, even after being a seasoned cop, firearms tactical instructor, mobile field force instructor, all this, being in different incidents, it's my opinion, and it's a 20/20 hindsight. Any way I look at it, you show me all the videos, I wasn't there. Okay, it's just an opinion. Okay, and I'm telling you this as with all my experience, right? So with all that said, also understand that you watch your football games on fucking Sundays and Mondays with a 8K HD camera from every angle, and you sit here there to dissect and judge a 15-second long camera video with like how many megapixels is on our body one? That was made in a split-second decision by an officer who possibly worked fucking 2-3 18-hour shifts back to back, which I have, sleep deprived, probably going through a divorce. Son might be hurt himself in at school soccer. So all these factors, and I had to go through that with my deposition, right? Okay. And years later, I'm sitting here being grilled by a private attorney about my decision, what I ate. Did I have fucking diarrhea the night before? Am I well rested? What's my relationship with my ex-girlfriend? Like, how can you dissect the whole situation from your perspective, and you're not even a fucking cop? Okay? It's one thing if you're asking me, but you have no idea. And then here's a kicker.
But the cops are just as bad.
No, I'll get there. Brother. This is me being the advocate for us cops. Because at the end of the day, I chose the profession. I love it. I will always be a cop at heart, right? Even though in a second we're going to talk about the shitty part of the police work from us cops. It's tough, man. It's not a job for everyone. I'll say it till the day I die. It's not a job for everyone, okay? And I've been to plenty of situations where it was like, listen, I'm about to have to smoke this person. Like, in my mind, I learned early on that play scenarios on your hands, so when the shit hits the fan, you're on autopilot and you make hopefully the right decision. So you can't sit here and judge a situation if you have no idea what the background story is
100%.
at all.
100%.
It's not even fair. It's not a fair fight. Don't you dare judge that officer. And then here's the kicker. Do you know that departments, buttfuck Iowa, somewhere in the desert, 10 officers per the whole department? What's their protocol like? Maybe their protocol does say, no matter what, you first pull a trigger. LAPD, we're pretty advanced, right?
Yeah.
Different departments in the area in LA, we're pretty advanced.
Correct.
Right? We have the gear to do the, we have the knowledge and
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, resources, tools.
Resources. Over there, like George Floyd, right? This is being a devil's advocate, right? That officer is at fault 100%, not justifying him.
Mm-hmm.
But do we know maybe that's their protocol? Put them down and put the knee on the back of their head.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in black and white on their protocol.
Yeah.
So now I have to look at the whole department. Hey, do you guys teach this shit? Do you guys practice this shit?
Yeah.
Is this common practice or not? So nobody knows that. Oh, how dare he put a knee on his back? Bad cop. Great.
Yeah.
Maybe he was. But if that's the protocol that's been taught by the department for decades,
Yeah.
then he was just following it.
No,
and he had no
100%.
idea how to do better.
Yeah, and to that point, that's the conversation that we should be having. But because George Floyd was black, then and the officer was white,
Was white. Oh, yeah.
that's a whole different.
That's a
it
whole
doesn't
different
become
beast,
about the actual application of
Yeah.
force. It becomes about racism and
100%.
things that we've been dealing with the as it relates to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Police brutality and the community, how we don't have all these relationships, and it sucks because I'm a true believer that had George Floyd would have been another race.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look at the
Maybe we
stats. The
wouldn't have-
stats don't lie.
Yeah.
Police officer involved shootings. Blacks are not the majority.
Correct.
It's whites are the majority. Yeah,
Yep.
but it's because when the color is involved, and we all know every 4 years,
Yeah.
right around election time, that's one thing that I hate about police work personally. We're using scapegoats
Yeah.
to fluff it up and put it in the media and cover something up and blow it up out of proportion. 100%. George Floyd was a piece of shit. I'll say it before. I'll say it again. Anybody who puts a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, okay,
Yeah.
and beats a woman up, that's not a man. That's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't care. That's just how it is. And I'm not just justifying the police officer's actions,
Right.
but you got to look bigger. And I
Yeah.
understood as when I became an instructor. Okay, because once I became an instructor, now I'm teaching these officers.
Yeah.
Now we're signing them off. Now if he goes out there and we clear them and I sign off on him that he's a good proficient shooter,
Yeah.
okay, and we both know, and I'm not gonna name names of departments where a person can't shoot for shit,
Yeah.
and I stand there and I wonder how is this person gonna survive in the shootout, and then sign off says no, and then senior officers say no, senior instructors. And then it gets kicked back down, say, hey, we need this guy. We're short-staffed. It has to say yes. Remediation, where they, by some miracle, pass, and they hit the shield. And I know that this person,
It's not fit to do
it's
this.
not fit to freaking hold a gun.
Yeah.
I have no idea how is it even going to badge. That shit is scary.
Yeah.
So
we
now,
do it to ourselves.
We do it to ourselves. That's what I was going to. Because we need more people, more staff, more officers.
100%.
And after George Floyd, dude, nobody wants to be a cop. Now it's kind of coming back up. But the first 3-4 years
Oh,
after
no.
that, bottom of the barrel.
Bro, we used to, who was I telling this? Back in my days, in 1998 when I applied, we used to have 1,000 applications a month.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 1,000, they only took the best 5%. Dude, you'd be lucky to get, I mean, you can quote me or not quote me, but I know it's got to be like a couple of hundred a month now that actually apply.
Yeah.
And it's not what it used to be. We can all agree to that. And to your point about being critical, not passing judgment, like you said, hindsight being 2020, taking all those factors into consideration. I just felt like as a podcaster, because we evolved. I mean, I started with internal affairs. Now I'm the IA guy, but I feel that I do have a responsibility to not so much tell you whether it's a good shooting or not. I think from my lens is, hey, let me kind of explain to you what the process is like. And not many people know that, even cops. Cops don't know that.
That's a lot of information.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you know what? Let me tell you about this OIS. Here's how it went down. We do know that they went to the DA's office. They considered filing. Guess what? It got rejected. Now we're talking with the admin. So now, what does the department do with these tactics? Were they all fucked up? And do we do an IA or do we just say, you know what? Just get them some training and put them back out in the streets. That's the conversation that gets where I feel, I can provide, some really good knowledge about, hey, this is what the process is like. There's some incidents, and I just teamed up, and, I'm sure we're going to get to this, is with BWClibrary.com. I teamed up with these two outstanding cops. They're active, and they decided to actually have a website where it's like a library.
Yeah.
Today I want to watch a man with a knife okay, I want to watch it outside or indoor. How far of a distance? 15, 20
That's a
feet,
genius
35 feet.
idea.
Do I want a taser? Or do I want a beanbag? Or, oh, and by the way, when they deploy the taser, what happened? And so you get to pick all these categories. So it's super, super comprehensive. You avoid ads. You avoid YouTube. You know, uh, looking around when you're doing roll call. It's just there for you. And so we added a category of expert breakdowns where I get to come in and say, hey, you know what? Let's talk about this incident. Here's what happened. But just from my experience and where I was going with this, there's one in particular where, well, there's two breakdowns that we've done thus far, dude, where they actually terminated. And there was one where one of the officers had like 4 years on. He deployed the taser on a man in a wheelchair. you know, Granted, the optics aren't all that great, but dude, they fired him. Not only did they fire him, the chief has a press conference and says, here's a taser that the officer used, and that was his first option. And that shouldn't always be the first option. So he's appeasing to the community.
Yeah.
But then I asked myself, okay, look, I'm not the chief. I'm not telling you that what decisions you should be making. But I asked myself, do we really have to just
Pander
cut
to
this guy on the knees and just fire him for that? I mean, really? And me personally, I don't think that we should do that because, again, I'm an advocate for police officers. I love Back in the Blue. But like I told you earlier, anything that happens on duty, you should be more lenient and flexible. Things that happen off duty, you know what? I'm going to have a problem with you continuing to be a cop.
Yeah. It's definitely a good point, and a double standard is there because if we're gonna judge that one officer by that one incident,
Yeah.
then do it across the whole 800,000 plus
100%.
officers. We can't just pick one,
Right.
and then try to appeal to the public. And then some departments, and when it comes to like command staff and above and the chiefs, that's all politics. And it
Yeah.
becomes like pointing fingers.
your best
Take
friend.
care of your best friend. Not only that, I'm not even gonna talk about that. The whole back when I was in LA, dude. When Chief Beck left and Moore came in. Remember that whole incident back then when Chief Moore just started the whole incident with the house and the command staff involved, and they do a little orgies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I saw for myself some of these photos that were going around. I mean, it was bad. Bad. And then it disappeared like that.
Yeah.
We thought like Chief Moore is about to go now, like any second. And then when everything went under the rug like that and disappeared and just moved on to the next thing, I was like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
So imagine how us patrol guys felt. Like when the command staff are doing these things right there, with their wives and stuff, all these photos going around, this what I'm talking about. And it's all gone, but they crucify us for saying, throwing a curse word. Like, come on.
Yeah, no,
that's when the
double
problems happen.
standard. Yeah.
Double standard. And majority of cops, like, they're us. We're foot soldiers.
Yep.
How do you think it made us feel? Would they crucify us for some bullshit? That's what I didn't like.
Oh, no, 100%.
I did not like that at all.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that happens a lot in every department. It happens more often than we want to, right? The only thing I can say about that is what made sense to me about the double standard is there could be a double standard in a sense that, let's just take a DUI, for example. Well, if a captain, gets a DUI,
Broad daylight.
in broad daylight or whatever the circumstances are, you know what, he or she is pretty much done. Their career's done. And maybe that type of penalty is completely different than the 2-year P2, that got into a DUI. We say that, well, if there's this unwritten rule, hey, give it 5 years and then you can promote, or you can get that specialized unit type of job. But I see where it doesn't have to be the same, right? So if that young police officer gets that DUI and they take a 10-day hit, and we know that they're probably not going to promote or get some specialized type of assignment for like 5 years minimum. It's the going. You ever heard of that? Well, give it 5 years. Unwritten rule.
Yeah.
Well, if you give
I don't think that's fair at all.
right, and if you give the captain or a commander or a deputy chief, same situation, a DUI. Well, you don't necessarily have to give them a 10-day suspension because we know that the minute they get it, they're done. Their career is completely over. So I get that part. What I don't like is what you were saying is where we see blatant misconduct, and this is just in law
Across, yeah,
enforcement,
all different
and
departments.
somehow, some way, we just kind of sweep it under the rug and it goes
Yeah.
away. So
I don't
yeah,
like what I don't like about the IA investigation itself
uh huh,
is like you just mentioned before. Like I had an investigation that was, a bunch of BS, ended up, being a big nothing.
mm-hmm.
But while I was waiting, and you said that earlier, because it takes, while I was waiting for it to go through motions and close up, and if everything was over, I was passed on for a promotion. Granted, it happened end up. I'm not mad or sour
Yeah,
about it.
you're reflecting on
Yeah,
it right now as you
but
speak.
it was back then. I applied for an FTO. I was like, whatever, let me just try it. I didn't
Uh-huh.
really care that much, right? Till this day, I don't want to be an FTO. Too much liability in my eyes, right?
Uh-huh.
But I was passed on because you haven't like an ongoing IA, right? You have to wait until it's closed out. We can't technically take
Yeah.
you. I was like, cool, whatever, shit happens, right? But thinking back, imagine being FTO was my dream, and I worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
I put in the work, I did, or whatever position it was, right?
Yeah.
And I get this bullshit complaint. You pulled me over because I'm black in a tinted car,
Yeah.
right? And you have to go through motions, like you said earlier. It takes time,
Yeah.
and at the end, that person wanted probably not even answer the phone or even come to the end hearing.
Yeah.
But you're stressed out, you're worried.
Mm-hmm.
People saying, the department rumors, this and that, you're being passed on. That is not fair at all
Yeah.
to a lot of
Oh,
officers.
100%. I mean, would you agree with me? And I say this all the time. The punishment's not the penalty. The punishment is the process.
The process,
What do you
100%,
think?
100%.
Do you think that process, and this is what I've learned a lot about the podcast, is from my guests, the common theme has been, hey, Marlon, you know what? I've had about 120 plus guests, and it's been like, Marlon, you know what? This punishment is not the penalty, man. It's the process, the way I was treated, the way they kept me on the island by myself. No one was there for me. I wasn't able to talk. Guess what? I can't talk to anybody because I was ordered not to talk to anybody about it. And so what it happens is it creates a lot of stress
Yeah,
in your home
psychological
life.
stress.
You can't even go home and tell your loved ones. And so that needs to change. And hopefully by having these conversations, we're able to, put a dent and maybe make this process better, bro.
Definitely, and I think we need people like you. We need people like I like what you do, right? Thank you for that. I like the guys that combine and creating the BWC library. That's good. A lot of I like the cops that honestly and fairly dissect body worn videos. One of them is my buddy from Breaking Barriers United. He does
Yeah.
a good job at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here and there we talk about it. He does it pretty good. When you try to give an unfair and unbiased opinion, right? Again, all it is just an opinion, right? Trying to explain to the public what the protocol is in general, what the what the policy and procedures are. I think it's a good thing because at least we can give them that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it goes to what we were talking about earlier. A lot of the, especially the public misinformation, right? You have this, this perception that
Facebook attorneys out there,
yeah,
all
that
keyboard
we are
warriors.
just this evil soul that are out there killing people. Hey, I got news for you. The average OIS, like you said, it's less than 2 seconds. It's like a second and a half.
Yeah,
And here you are expecting me, after all my training experience, to pull the trigger. And in my mind, with all the stress, sleep deprivation, working, just life, and I'm human, and all these human factors come into play. Yeah, I got to make this decision. And sometimes that decision comes with a price. I always say this is that when you get involved in OAS, it's you have consequential damages.
definitely.
You're damaged. You could be damaged emotionally, psychologically, and physically, right? I mean, you can get into an OIS, you get hit in the shoulder, and next you know, your shoulder's not the same. So just know that you're fractured in many different aspects, and I think the public needs to really understand that no one goes to work thinking that they're going to get into an OIS.
Yeah, yeah, never.
know.
I always, every single day since the moment I had my first day on patrol as a rookie, till now, every single day, I say a prayer when I put on my vest, and all I ask God is, let me go home to my family.
Yeah.
let me go home to my family. Like I have the St. Michael patch on my vest, right in the front, and I always said a prayer. And thank God he always brought me home. But there's certain things about this job. It's stressful enough as is. I remember I'll share an incident with you when I lateral to a different department. Right, I was already a seasoned cop. I remember the day we were patrolling. I have a newly signed FTO. You know, he's pretty good FTO. He's retired now, and I'm just having this argument day with my ex at the time, right? And she was notorious for fucking blasting my phone. And I'll tell her, stop texting me. Like, nature of my work and knowing me, like, I was always active, right, on the streets. Like, don't text me. Like, we can talk about this at home. And she'll just blast my phone. I remember we jammed up. We got a call, and we pull up. And usually I'm tactically safe. And on that day, I freaking, instead of stopping before those three gangsters, I passed them and I stopped, which is a crazy rookie mistake. I would never do that, right? I just passed right by and I stopped.
Yeah.
So we handled the situation. We sit back in the car. We drive off. He's like, pull over. He's like, listen, man. Yeah, I'm UFTO. Yeah, you're a seasoned cop from a big department. You know what you're doing, but what the fuck was that? Like, I've never seen you make a mistake like that. He's like, that could have cost us our life. Okay? So it's like, from this point on, understand that never bring work home, never bring home to work. That will cost you your life. To this day, I remember it, and I apply it to business, anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that can cost you your life.
Yes.
And a lot of times,
Very well
what
said.
a lot of cops do that, and we're notorious. And now I'm tapping into what I actually want to talk to you about. We are our own worst enemy in the policy and the procedures, right?
Yes.
But I think we're even worse enemies when it comes to self-care, self-development, right? The amount of shit talk we do on a daily basis, we lose the threshold of how do we deal with stress at work? Dark humor, right? Humor is our way of coping with people, right? I mean,
Yes.
you see enough brains on the wall and dead people, and then we're all macho, right? Oh man, you see that brain matter was still warm, bro. Ha ha. It was, right?
Yeah.
But inside is like, fuck, man. That's somebody's.
Yeah.
That person just shot themselves. We were 5 seconds, before we pulled up code 6.
Yeah.
We heard the gunshot. We heard the
Yeah.
freaking gunshot when we pulled up,
Absolutely.
dude. You know?
Absolutely.
And that brain matter was still like dripping down the
Yeah.
wall. And then I remember that, some jokes were made, but it's our way of covering that crap, dude.
Yeah.
Like, because
We
we're
mask
we're
it.
not gonna go
We
home.
mask it with
we
humor.
mask it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go back home. You think I'm gonna tell my wife, hey babe, so they just shot herself and her brain was like,
Yeah.
I'm not.
No.
So I can't say it at work. I can't say it at home. Who do I say it to? Bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yes.
And I say enough to a bottle of Jack Daniels. Who's the last person I'm gonna say it to? My own pistol.
Yeah.
Okay? God knows what happened after that. And this happens again and again
Yes.
and again, man. And that is what is unfortunate. Like past even IA stuff, bro.
Yeah. No. Yeah. God, you just the life. I remember. You remember when cops used to come in and say, "You're like, hey, what's up, bro? How you doing? How's it going?" And someone would say, "Huh, you know what? Just living a dream, another day in paradise."
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, this is not really paradise. I always thought to myself. The other one that the light bulb hit lately is when cops used to say, "Oh, coming to work is like a vacation." Like, in other words, I'd rather be at work
That's a bad one too.
than be at home.
That's a bad one.
Exactly, because that only tells me that you just don't want to be at home dealing with all your issues with your wife and your kids and your marriage. You don't. You'd rather
You
crawl
escape.
and escape
yep.
and bring it here at home because I'm sorry, here at work, because at work I have a sense of entitlement. I feel some power, and I'm with my boys. I'm in this environment. Once I let go of this environment, go home, I don't want to deal with it. I want to run away. And so, yeah, man, a lot of these issues, 25 years ago, we didn't even think about stuff like that. I had a guest who told me, even in OIS, can you imagine? I mean, I've never been through an OIS, but having to live with the fact that you took someone else's life, I couldn't even bear those type of feelings. It would probably haunt me. I had a guest who was on probation, right? You know this. On a probationary period, you just want to finish your probation because you're a temporary employee. They can fire you with no cause, right?
Yeah.
And he got into an OIS like 3 weeks out of the academy, dude. And he was told by his training officer and all his colleagues and his partners, forget about that OIS. Just forget about it because you have to pass probation. So he felt like he had to grab this whole experience and just put it on the shelf and not talk about it, right? And so I think we go wrong there.
We do.
We
We do.
and to your point, you release all these emotions with Jack Daniels, and sometimes you feel like you're helpless, and you see this, and you start having these suicidal ideations, and I think it's wrong. I wouldn't say that it's wrong. I just think that we should be more.
Invest into officer wellness.
What definitely invest into officer wellness, but we should somehow, some way, your colleagues should know what those trigger alerts are, where we can get you that help or tell you, you know what, hey Alex, bro, I know you're not doing well. Come on, bro, tell me what's going on, and that's where I think we kind of need to improve.
100%. I agree with you. That's the reason why I became a peer support council. Because, well, first of all, going back to my incident, where me and you had the fortune and pleasure of meeting, yeah, we didn't shoot the guy. We fought the guy physically, right? We had to shoot him with the beanbag a bunch of times. We went hands-on. We fought the guy. He was a strong dude, but he all methed up like crazy. Now, speaking of meth strength, that is a serious thing. Like, I never fought anybody. One time I had
That's a
some
whole
PCP.
different ballgame, bro.
Yeah. But I mean, he was strong. I was 200 pounds at the time. He was on the ground lifting me up and down with my entire body. That's superhuman strength. Granted, it wasn't a shooting, but me and a few officers, we went in hand-to-hand combat with a guy, and he ended up not making it. And then it's just, well, first of all, it was not a pleasant feeling to sit there in court and a medical examiner stands there and publicly says, well, the cause of death is murder. And they have to use that terminology because anything that causes somebody to die outside of their own internal factor is considered murder.
Okay.
So first of all, sitting there and hearing that we murdered a guy because the terminology for that is murder is not pleasant.
No.
Right? And I went through our motions. When you go back right after time off, you go through the assigned shrink. Oh, do you sleep well? Yeah. Do you eat well? Yeah. Do you worry about that incident? No. Cool. You're clear to go back to work. And I remember like months later, right? I come home. I was with my ex at the time. It was just like, and it kept building up, right? And I grew up in the farm, like, slaughtering animals, chicken, sheep, pig, whatever. So, I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. But that was a human being that, like it or not, obviously his actual reason for his death was like 3 or 4 times the amount of like lethal dose of methamphetamine combined with the fighting and all that stuff causes heart to stop.
Right.
Not so much that we beat him to death that causes heart to stop, right? It's OD. But at the end of the day, he was somebody's son, brother, right? Child.
Yeah.
And we, like it or not, participated into an incident where he ended up passing away. So that does haunt you a little bit, right? And I remember 100%. I just in the kitchen, and I broke down with my ex. I'm like, listen, man, at the end of the fucking day, he was a human being. He's somebody's child. Yeah. And I participated in lawful, justifiably, right, in the performance of my duties. I'm clear, nothing criminal. But I was a part of that. Whether he was a gangster or not, a parolee, whatever. I was a part. It's not a good feeling. I can only imagine, like I have a lot of friends who went through combat, came back all fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay. Beyond fucked up. They had to go to therapy over and over again. How many vets did I have to deal with on the street as a patrol officer?
Yeah.
I always broke my heart. How many vets?
Yeah.
And so that's tough.
Yeah.
And then what you said earlier, right? They give us the tools. They train us how to shoot, how to fight, how to this and that, but they barely give us any tools of how to deal with the aftermath of all that. Barely anything. And so when I got hurt and I went IOD, and I used to put in crazy amount of overtime, right? And for years, right, working 68 hours a week, my boys, everybody were having a good time. And then I got hurt. Hard stop to all of that.
Yeah.
Hard stop to my most favorite thing out there, which is working out, and I'm at home. Day after day after day. Okay? And then what happens? We're all family, brother. Nobody reaches out.
Of course.
Nobody. 3 people reached out to me. And to this day, they're only 3 out of the whole department. And I don't blame it. I'm not mad at anybody. Everybody have a life, family. Cool. But it just, imagine, and you don't do what you do. You can't even go to a gym. You're borderline depressed. Nobody gives a fuck about you. When in reality, anywhere in life that happens. What happens then? You start going mental. You're like, well, damn, man, this is all a painted picture.
Yeah.
It's not what it is. And so what did I have to do, man? Instead of spiraling down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I started going to therapy. I started investing in myself. And my therapy started by kind of, going over and deal with incidents at work. Mm-hmm. Once I cleared all that out, I realized that my real issues are rooted into my childhood, like my deep acute childhood trauma, right? Mm-hmm. Physically abusive alcoholic father, stabbing my mom in front of me, fighting my brother, blood. As an 8, 9-year-old, that's not the type of shit a kid should see, man, when your dad stabs your mom.
100%.
And, going deep into that, like, I blocked that out of my memory for decades. And I had to go back, revisit it, dissect it, talk about it to my therapist, right? That's painful, man. Yeah. So the process of healing is long.
Yes.
Is long. And then once I went through all that, it kind of took me out of the police work, and I realized, like, we're so great at putting each other down. That nonstop shit talk that we're machismo, like, come on, Marlon, you're better than that, man. You're a man. You're a cop. You're this, right?
Fuck that, bro.
But I don't know what's going on the inside. Yeah. Maybe you died on the inside, brother. Yeah. You're not gonna tell me. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we will fucking find out what happens. That's too freaking late, man. Mm-hmm. So this whole system, the reason why I became a peer support counselor is because I want to kind of help these guys because they're not given the tools. Yeah. That machismo, personality is not helpful, man. It's not helpful at all. Yeah. So, and then add on top of Aisha on top of that. Yeah. It's a recipe for disaster.
100%, man. You're doing God's work, man. I really appreciate you sharing all that stuff. How what you might believe to be just work-related trauma, in reality, you start pulling back the curtains, and it becomes, things that you experience as a child. Your mom and dad put you through, right? Because we're modeled by our parents. Mm-hmm. We have this modeling type of learning. Mm-hmm.
We copy what we see.
Exactly. You whatever you see is what you're going to do. And we deal with the human element when it comes to law enforcement, but yet we're not, for whatever reason, we shut down when it comes to things that we see, things that we experience. And so, when you ask about the worst incident, I know when I do on the podcast, we always dig to our darkest moments when you were out there, and hopefully it helps, to talk about it.
Man, what do you think? What do you think needs to change overall in police work? Like, what's the one thing you think needs to change in order for the officers, let's say, maybe have less IA investigations, but I don't think it will go away because that's also public initiated a lot of times. Yeah. Right? But what do you think in your experience as a supervisor, and you've done long enough time in police work? What's the one thing you think we can do better, or can be changed in order for officers to become better, maybe in the scope of dealing with this stress, or be better officers?
Be transparent, bro. If we preach transparency, then don't be half-ass about it. Yeah. That's one of my things that bothers me the most is we preach transparency with the public a lot, and we do a good job. We talked about earlier how we release all these videos on YouTube and to the community briefing, AB 4221. But the question is, how transparent are we amongst ourselves? And the answer to the question is no. We're not.
Trauma. Why? Tell me why. Why do you think?
From a disciplinary lens, I think because a lot of adjudicators, and this is just from my experience, speaking of adjudicators, people who make the decisions, kind of take it personal sometimes. It's self-serving. I don't like Alex. I don't like Marlins. I just make it sustain and give them a couple days suspension, whatever, right? When in reality, that's not what it's about. And I think the other reason, just in general, just law enforcement essential job functions in a law enforcement environment, why we're not that transparent in terms of, like, we're talking about what you're going through mentally, we're just, You know, we have big egos, man. We're huge
Amen, brother.
egos. You know
Amen.
what? We have a lot of testosterone. We think we're the best. Fucking
Mm-hmm.
swatologists, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They fuck that. I'm not gonna let my partner know that this situation really bothered me. You know. So I again, we do it to ourselves, but more than anything, we can change it. If I were to, it's just communicate, man. Let's talk. Let's go have, let's go break bread and talk about it. Whether it's an IA, hey man, you know what? Yeah, dude, they're saying that you fucking threw this guy up against the wall when you were at the 7-Eleven parking lot. What are you fucking talking about, Sergeant? Whoa, bro. Hey, man, I'm just letting you know. I'm letting you know. Now, we got to go through the process, okay, dude? But I'm going to communicate with you and be transparent with you. I'm going to say, hey, Alex, you know what? It's been assigned to Sergeant Johnson. Hey, Alex, you know what? Did Sergeant Johnson call you to schedule your interview? No, he didn't. Okay, I get a hold of Sergeant Johnson. And then Sergeant Johnson should be giving you a call. Hey, Alex, you know what? In 2 weeks, I'm going to turn it in. I'm going to write it all up and turn it in. Hey, Alex, you know what? Now it's at the lieutenant. He's taking a look at it and reviewing it.
Yeah.
Hey, Alex, in about 2 weeks, the captain's going to sign off on it. Hey, Alex, you know what? They're going to go present it to the chief in 3 weeks from now. That way, you know, and you feel a sense of like, because you don't know what this process is. You came on the job. You didn't know what a fucking IA was.
Mm-hmm. When I came on a job, it's probably to this day. Hey, don't get in trouble.
Exactly.
IA
Don't
is
get
the
an IA.
enemy.
Exactly.
IA sergeant,
Right.
snitch, or he's after you.
Exactly.
You know?
So if there's one thing that we need to change in law enforcement, me being, chief of the day, would be, you know what? Let's have more roundtables and let's communicate, man. Let's be more transparent about stuff that we do. Let's not hide the ball. Let's not, show our emotions to your partner. Say, hey, dude, you know what? I need a day off tomorrow, dude, because that fucking suicide call fucked me up.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Then give him the day off. Oh well, we're low on deployment. You can't take the day off. It's just stuff like that. So that's what needed the most is to communicate and to be more transparent, especially when we preach transparency to the public. We need to be transparent amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Ego is definitely the enemy of that.
For 100%.
I remember when George Floyd things happened. We were on a tackler deployment, 12 on, 12 off, 12 on, 12 off. I was on Sea Watch, 17 days straight graveyard shift, 12 on, 12 off. I was sick and tired by the end of the 17th day. Wow. And I remember, man, like, luckily, thank God, I had a pretty good support group. My family supported me. Most of my friends, online. Obviously, some of them, like, you're a fucking pig, right?
Yeah.
Like, bro, I've never even done dirty by you. Mm-hmm. I had pretty good support system. But, dude, every day, just public pumping this on you. Every day out of the car. Fuck you. Fuck the police.
Yeah.
You're a piece of shit. I don't even know you.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked you straight.
It's a historical event.
And it goes on and on and on. And some departments, I forgot, what was it, Washington or Seattle, 104 days nonstop, getting bombarded, getting thrown, getting shot at, getting like this. I mean, it psychologically fucks you up.
Oh, yeah.
You start asking yourself, hey, am I really the bad guy?
Yeah.
Hey, are all officers racist? Like, I had new guys like, man, dude, really? Like, we're here. We're like thousands of miles away from that department. We never did wrong by anybody. Like, how did we just went from being praised to now being hated and pigs, being tagged in our cars? Like, we haven't done shit.
Yeah.
They can't comprehend that. It fucks with your psyche.
100%.
That's not healthy.
No, it's not. And then the other point to that is that was such a historical landmark event, incident, I should say, unfortunately, that even affects people who want to come on the job.
Oh, you did?
There's a young Alex and a young Marlon out there wanting to apply, to become a cop. And they're like, fuck, you know what? I don't want to do this.
I tell you that firsthand, because after that, I was helping out, volunteer at a recruitment unit.
Yeah.
Right? For the PTs and quals and stuff like that. And the quality of recruits went down.
Oh, yeah.
And the ones that we had, dude, will show up late with a beanie on, with a beard, with headphones, and you tell them with the glasses,
whole different
and
generation.
doing a mile and a half with headphones on, and you tell them to remove the headphones to the point. And I'm saying, I've said what I said. I was like, there's one guy I tell him multiple times to take the headphones out of his ears when he's doing his mile and a half qual. Imagine, I'm like, dude, I told you once already, take it out of your freaking your ear. And I remember, like, at the end of it, whatever I said was done, the call was over. One of our senior officers was like, she was like, well, Alex, you're a good officer, but understand that, we're struggling already. And these are not the type of officers that were when we were getting on the job. I was like, so you're telling me to lower my standards?
Yeah.
So if I lower my standards, that means we all lower our standards as a recruitment unit, which means we're doing a disservice to the public and the city
100%.
who's paying us to do our job,
Yeah.
to hire the best of the best, and we're already at the bottom of the fucking barrel after George Floyd incident.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you this, bro. I slowly was weeded out of and never really called in again to recruitment unit, which I was fine with. I'm a good shooter. I wanted to do what I do with shooting
Yeah.
tactics. But let me just say, dude, what my reaction did not. And I
So,
don't care.
well,
I
yeah.
said what I said because I believe in it.
Yeah. No.
We're doing the service to the public if we start hiring trash.
Yeah.
Because 5-10 years down the road, IA guys like you are
Yeah.
gonna get cases on their tables.
100%.
Somebody jerking off in a patrol car.
Yeah.
Somebody doing this. Somebody
Yeah.
having sex while their radio is on. Right?
Yeah.
Let's not name departments.
Yeah.
You know that one.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, but I had
Yeah.
to say what I had to say, man.
Yeah.
I was a bad guy.
Getting locked in the back seat of a police vehicle with the arrestee.
Oh, dude, man. Let's not name departments, but
Well, I did a breakdown on that when I was
Oh,
at San Diego PD, which we use as a tool for learning in our internal affairs course. I used to hear rumors about there was a point in time in the academy where if you came in as a recruit and said, I don't want to do this job anymore, I want to quit, they would tell you, you know what, just go home for 30 days. You can go home, really think about your decisions, and take your time. You have up to a month to take your time and really, really dig deep, and deep down inside and ask yourself if you really want to quit because we want you here. There was that going on. I'm talking several years ago. But here's the other angle to that too is you're a young, smart person that wants to make a difference, right? Put bad people in jail, right? And you realize that you make an arrest, and within like 5 hours,
person's out.
they're fucking out.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
What difference did I make?
yeah, what impact am I making, here? And that's another problem, And so, but I didn't think about shit like that when I came on. I was just happy that, oh, dude, my best friend, he was my major influence for me to come on the job, and I was just happy knowing that I was going to be a cop and just, get out there and do work. I wanted to chase bad guys, run plates, code 37
Yeah.
vehicle, request an airship in the backup, and hear the chase. That was the adrenaline. So I wanted I wanted the adrenaline and that feeling of feeling like, oh shit, it's about to go down. But I didn't think about the things that I shouldn't say people, what this generation thinks about now prior to, compared to, I should say, 25 years ago.
Is there something, because a lot of times, let's be honest, man, people who really love the job for the job itself, right? The adrenaline junkie is being a part of that. I know for a fact, and after doing therapy, that sometimes looking for jobs or hobbies or adventures like that is because something in your childhood was so disturbing that it now left that mark on you that you constantly seek that. And for me, for sure, my certain fucked up parts of my childhood left me, obviously, number one, be want to be protector and provider, because and then number two, like, I hate bullies. Number three is just like, helping. I want to help people, and another factor was like, I don't want others to go through the same thing I went through.
Yeah.
And wanting that chaos. And I've operated in chaos for 5 years of my life. Just a year ago, I realized life is not about chaos. So I was like, I thrive in chaos. And what did it get me? Emergency room visits, shingles, anxiety attacks. So now I'm relearning all that. But that's a lot of my childhood. For you just said you wanted on a job, you wanted the adrenaline rush, the code 37, the chase. For you, was it something in your childhood and upbringing that left that mark on you, wanted that chase?
Yeah, well, I think at the time that's what I thought about. But now as I sit here and reflect on this conversation, I think about neglect and abandonment, right? So my mom and dad divorced when I was 3 years old. So my first time having dinner with my mom and dad was when I was 19 years old. So I came from a very, my dad's in Peru, my mom is here. there was a point in time in my childhood where I traveled back and forth. And so I experienced a lot of neglect, a lot of abandonment, absent father. That's huge here
Mm-hmm.
in, well, it's not just Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles.
Both of us here.
That is a huge gap
Yep.
that has an impact as you grow up, right? And so for me, and then watch a lot of trauma. There was a lot of incidents in my when I came here with my stepfather, along with my sister, who is she passed away 3 years ago from terminal cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
She was a she did a she was a drug addict, right? For I want to say 25, 27 years of her life. The choice was meth, and it really took an impact on the family. And so everything that I experienced in my journey, if you will, made me actually. I didn't think about it when I applied and was in the academy, but when I got out in the streets, you know what? It just made me a better cop.
Mm-hmm.
It made me realize that I just don't want. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
them to, I don't want someone to go through what I went through. So I think you do a lot of reflection
Mm-hmm.
when you do this job. Um, I'm sure lawyers do too. Maybe there is, because I went to law school and I wanted to be a police
Mm-hmm.
attorney because I want to help cops. I always feel like cops get, they get the rear end of the stick sometimes
Yeah.
with this process, right? More often than not, and I'm just being honest.
Oh, it's the truth.
It's
Yeah,
the
it's the
truth.
truth.
We're not all perfect. I don't think we do a good job holding the department accountable, which is probably one of several reasons why they started to do this podcast. But then again, I don't want you to come in and just go off on on a rant or
Yeah.
vent like, "Hey, let me tell you how fucked up the department did
Yeah.
me." Hold on a second. Let's take some accountability
Mm-hmm.
because let's not make the department out to see. There is some are assholes and go after you. I get that, but for me, I felt like my journey of the things that I went through from having I wouldn't say it's so much a dysfunction in my family, but it was broken. It was very inconsistent. There was no sense of calmness, and the trauma and the drama that came along. Um, I think for me it was more because I'm a sports dude. I'm a soccer fucking junkie, dude. I'm a team sports fanatic guy. I watch everything under the fucking moonlight, except hockey. But I watch everything
Mm-hmm.
else. The point I'm trying to bring is that I always felt, and that's why I joined the Navy. I did almost 4 years in the United States Navy. My dad's a retired admiral, so that was my way of paying back to my dad. But I did it when I was 25, bro. I'm a late bloomer in my life. It's been, hey, you look like you're too late to do this. It's that saying, as corny as it sounds, right? It's never too late. That was me. I joined the Navy when I was 25. I got in the academy when I was 30. But you know what? That was a good age,
Mm-hmm.
especially after
Mm-hmm.
everything that I went through. I didn't I didn't panic when I went to a radio call and I saw
Yeah.
fucking this dude beating up his wife. If
Yeah.
anything, I empathize like that's fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
You know what? You shouldn't be doing that shit. You're gonna go to fucking jail. So I didn't lose my cool. I wasn't nervous, Now getting involved in, there's been times where I'm like, oh shit, it looks like this might end up into a shooting, but that's besides the point. But I think trauma, I think conflict, somehow, some way is healthy because it teaches you to be a little bit more,
Empathetic.
definitely more empathetic, but it just makes you feel like, you know what? It's not really about me. It's more about you. And I owe that a lot to a great mentor of mine who told me when I first made sergeant, when I made sergeant, promoted in January of 2007, shortly after, I want to say, not even within a year, shout out to Commander Kyle Jackson. He's the one who put me aside, young in my sergeant rank. He said, "You know what, Marlon? Don't ever let this job be about politics and egos. Leave that at the door because it's never about you. and don't ever make it about you. So don't like show up to, you have a 2 hour block of presentation and you have the PowerPoint. You know what? Don't even put your name on it, bro.
Yeah.
You don't think people know who you are when you walk in and when you're up there spitting, doing your thing? Now, when you're done doing your presentation and you want the last slide and say, hey, you want to get a hold of me, here's my info, here's my cell, here's my email. But we often have this me.
Oh, dude,
know,
I hate that part.
We call those CMOs. You heard that?
CMO.
Check me out, check me out, check me out.
You serious?
There's a lot of CMOs out there, and I was that guy. I always wanted to be that guy. And I think my childhood and my journey of the things that have an impact is because my mom and dad weren't always there for me. So I always wanted to be, hey, look at me shine. Look at me and look what I'm doing now. Validate my position. Validate my, because I get a sense of empowerment. So I think for wanting to be a cop gave me that void. When you're a kid, you want mom and dad to be proud of you, to validate what you do good, right? Hey, great job on that test. Or you did great, today you hit a home run. And I've missed that throughout my entire teenage years, if you will. When I came here, my mom, she is my everything. That woman's my hero. At one point, she worked a lot of jobs just to make ends meet. But she wasn't really there to guide me and hold me and walk me through the alley sometimes, And, sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's not. But I want to say that for me, wanting to be in, even though that adrenaline, because that's all I knew. All we knew in the academy, when I became an officer and got out of the academy is, bro, fucking running plates. And, dude, that's going to come back fucking stolen code 37 vehicles, give me an air in the back. That was the thrill. I didn't really think about, everything else that comes, showing up to, domestic violence or a rape investigation. Those things I empathize a lot, but my main focus was this. But then all these years have gone by and I asked myself, why did I really, really become a police officer? Why did I choose this? Besides my best friend being the influence, I then want to re-enlist in the Navy. It gave me a sense of validation to tell my parents, hey, look at me now. Be proud of who I am. And I'm not the only one. There is so many of my colleagues, people that I know, that grew up with, broken families and absent fathers. It's huge. I mean, my best friends, all 5 of my inner circle best friends, we all are raised by our moms.
Yeah, sure. I'm the byproduct of that.
Yeah, we are like that. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how much of an impact that has until you actually did this job.
Has a huge impact, yeah. A huge impact.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
For me, now I kind of sense that because it's the same thing for me. So I was like, yeah, and let me ask him. I think that there's something internal in that because, dude, acute childhood experiences is what shapes us, like it or not, agree or not, and then not many, unlike you, like you're self-conscious, self-aware enough to actually go back and think about that. Because once you really put the ego aside, you start to realize, oh, why am I the way I am, right? And me coming from LAPD, right? Same thing, man. We would run, my partner and I would run cars until it hits 199 on the computer because it wouldn't go to triple digits. It stays at 99 and that's it. Remember that old system?
Yeah.
And after a lot also small department, right? Less action. You know, there's not as much guns and dope and pursuits, right? Smaller city. I was okay, but more calls of domestic violence, right? Richer city, so you got to provide better service, rapes, this and that. So now I'm like, at first, like, man, I fucking hate this. I'm a LAPD, Newton trade, this department trade, like I'm running and gunning. And then I had to switch off and go to that low key mode, right? And I realized, dude, okay, majority of police work is that. Okay, that's majority of police work. Once I realized it, then I was like, we're doing our job with best intentions, but we're a Band-Aid to a stab wound.
Yeah.
You spend, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours on a radio call, bro, domestic violence, child abuse, whatever. You leave, they're back to square one. And you only hope to God that you had some kind of impact on them.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I created this, because for me, I started realizing I had a social project. One of them was like, why do we have a homelessness issue? Have never solved that one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But another one was like, I started paying attention to the families, to the children, to the social dysfunction, to that, and that spills out into everything in society. And I was like, lack of fathers.
Yeah.
Lack of fathers, lack of masculinity, good, proper masculinity.
100%.
And that's what that baby came out. And that's why I'm reading all these books.
That's awesome.
And I was like, dude, you take away the father, it ruins the nucleus of the family. And after that, everything goes downhill, man. Stats don't lie, dude. Stats don't lie.
You're right. I mean, we all know that the majority of incarcerations are males.
Yep.
So when you, you know, and we have what, I think at one point, I don't even know what the numbers are, but I know we have 30-something correctional facilities in the state of California. I think at one point, the population 700,000. No, about 70,000 maybe. I think, give or take, 80, 70 or 80 at one point. They're incarcerated. Bro, more than 50, 60, maybe even 70% of the population of people who are incarcerated are men.
Yeah.
You know what that tells you? They're not at home.
Yeah.
They're
Yep.
not at home.
Nope.
You know, and your kids out there, you know, and your mom, and this, if you come from poverty, you come from this subculture, you know, like South Los Angeles, or there's parts in LA where dad's a day laborer. Mom has no choice but to work 3 jobs, you know,
They're never
to
around,
pay the
yeah.
rent. She's never around, and dad's incarcerated. What do? I got the homies.
And the uncles, the cousins,
You
the
know,
homies.
yeah.
And then you mentioned that earlier. What do kids want, right? We want to be loved. We want to feel belong, right? And accepted, right?
Validated
Validated, right?
Yes.
And where do we find that if we don't have it at home?
with the homies.
With the homies.
Yes.
And then the homies, they just lead you down the wrong path, man.
Exactly.
I come from the same, like, where I
Yeah.
grew up growing up back in Russia, dude. Like, I had to leave my own culture, my environment, you know, my own community, because first of all, being a cop in my community, like, you don't want to be a cop in Russia.
Right.
It's a war's job, like in Mexico. It's all about bribes. There's
Oh,
no
yeah.
respect. There's no there's
100%.
no incentive in that. So I had to leave my own community partially because of that, and then just totally ghost everybody. And another part is like, oh, you're gonna be a fucking cop? Like, how dare you? You know,
Yeah.
you go. And I had, you know, homies who were not supposed to be, you know, doing it, and some of them not even here with us anymore.
Right.
So I had to leave all that and start from scratch. As a matter of fact, my drug addict nephew was unfortunately, you know, going in and out and now trying to fight this addiction. Meth is a evil, pure evil, and affects a drug addict in the family affects everything, bro.
100%.
It's the most evil, toxic, just destructive thing out there, and it usually happens to people who are good, kind, genuine,
Yeah.
good-hearted people.
Yeah.
I'm sure your sister was one of those people.
Oh,
dude.
100%.
It affects like the people who should never been affected by
Yeah.
that, and it destroys everything around
And
them.
it's your trauma
It's a trauma.
from the childhood.
And so, like, just being affiliated, just being related to that, like, I remember in the academy, second week in the academy, they're like, hey, your address matches his address. Even though he wasn't living there, just in and out of rehab, right? They're like, we give you until, it was a Monday, we give you a week. By next Monday, if you don't move out and bring this application with a new address, right, you're out. So I had a week to find a new place, move out on my own, and just basically scramble. And I got lucky. I took care of it and figured it out.
Right.
But, like, they don't care.
No.
The department doesn't care.
Right.
It's whatever's on paper.
That's right. You can associate with known felons.
No, and they don't care. The person is the most genuine, good, kind-hearted people who would give the last piece of bread to somebody else.
Yeah.
No, drug addict.
Yeah.
And it's the, you know, sometimes other people's decisions affect your life, man.
Yeah, you know, the other point, too, that I found interesting also is that in terms of absent fathers, I don't know what's worse, is having a physical, complete absent father that, you know, it's not around, you know, you can't see, you know, you can't be with, or having a father that's actually in the household, right? But they're absent. I don't know which one has more of an impact. I want to say
I think
they
I can
both
answer
do.
that question confidently. You know why? You know, I'll let you finish, but I think I can answer that question with confidence.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think, let me put it this way, man. My dad, ex-felon, you know, in and out of prison, violent tendencies, anger issues, right? But I haven't seen him since I turned 16 years old. That crucial age where I had to learn how to be a man. So I just didn't have him around. Period.
Right.
right? I saw him like 10 years after that, came to this country and that. So to me, it was like, okay, I don't know how to be a man. Let me just
Yeah.
find out how to be a man,
Yeah.
right? Versus, and I'll say this, I had to step in to be a father figure to my niece because my sister-in-law's husband, unfortunately, was a fucking just, I can't even call that guy a man.
Right.
Totally just horrible husband, horrible father,
Mhm.
you know, and he's partially to blame for the fact that my nephew became a drug addict. And like when my niece was little, I basically took over. I became her dad. To this day, every Father's Day, I get a text from her, happy birthday, you know, my favorite uncle, but AKA dad, my number one. And she's my first child, sort of. Typical example of being a father at home, but not being a father.
Yeah.
Come home from work, lay on the couch and watch TV.
Yeah.
Zero fucking participation in his children's lives. And I think that's worse because she sees that growing up.
Yeah.
So in her mind, that's a bare minimum registry of what it's like to be a husband and a father. So my fear always was, I hope to God she doesn't go out there in real world.
Yeah.
And that's a fucking standard for her to find a man. And I always fought my whole life for her to show what it's like to be a man and set the standard.
Yeah.
And I think that's worse than just purely not having a dad because you're a sponge at this point.
Yeah.
But when you have a horrible fucking example,
Yeah.
like below zero,
Yep.
that's worse, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to, as I reflect, as you're explaining this, having an absent father physically at home is worse. I got to tell you, man, I was that typical cop that depended on supplemental income. I gotta have it. It was my only way of surviving and maintaining a good lifestyle because you and I can agree we don't get paid enough. We don't. I don't care who. Don't get me wrong. It's a great salary now where you can live a certain comfortable lifestyle. But man, bro, I spent 20 years of my life working 6, 7 days a week, dude. And all it got me was a divorce and it got me time away from my daughter. And so when it was time for me to start thinking about retiring, I ended up going to law school because I had aspirations to become a lawyer and to be that police attorney that you need, that you want. Because, again, my brother's an attorney. I know he answers his phone when he can, but what attorney do you don't know that says, "Oh my God, I'm swamped. I got too many cases. I got to be in court here." Your phone just blows up, right? And so I always wanted to be that one that I'm gonna answer every single phone call because I'm not gonna. I know what this process is like, and I'm not gonna keep you in the dark while you're walking this alley. And so I started realizing that, Mike, I don't, my health and waking up 2, 3 in the morning, weekends to work an overtime shift, I said, you know what, there's got to be other ways for me to live and make money and not, and do it at my at my pace. 1, 2, I'm going to achieve financial independence one day. And so, but more than anything was my daughter. My daughter was in college, and I did take a job. I took a job as a lieutenant over at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and again, I felt like I was chasing the carrot, bro. I was driving. I spent an hour and a half just driving back home on the 405, and you know what? I'm thinking to myself, dude, I'm in my mid-50s. I was under the impression that I can get another pension at 5 years best. No, it was 10. I'm thinking, dude, do I want to be in my 60s driving all the way across the 405 and being away from my daughter? My daughter's still calling, hey, Dad, when are you going to come home? When are you going to come home? I just said, you know what? My daughter and my health is way more important than this career. And I was in a point in my career where, you know what, I've done it all. I could have promoted, but it would have dragged me into the swamp more than enjoying my life. And the last 2.5 years, super, super healthy, free, and I get to enjoy, a loved one, not just my daughter, but be in a relationship where I actually get to come home and provide, enjoy, pay attention, be there, where it's It's a mess, man. You can see yourself. You know this. Anybody who's out there doing this job, it'll take a toll on you. Not only just what you see, the trauma of all these, your essential job functions, but at home, man. You bring that shit home, and I mean, the divorce rate's got to be way over 60%. I mean, that's just the way it is. So
No, we're
yeah,
we're
man.
out
You know
there.
what? It's been quite a ride, but now doing the podcast, teaching, and consulting, got to get my soccer in every Sunday, man. I'm out there, with the old 50 and 60 heads.
That is the secret. Remember,
Yeah, that's my
the
secret. Hey,
I
bro.
asked you earlier.
That's 130 BPM when I'm playing. We're over 10,000 steps a day.
Dude, that's good.
Like-
you are an outlier for your age group. I'm gonna tell you right now, you're an outlier physically. You're an outlier that with BPM with 10,000 steps a day plus. Tell you right now, you're an outlier.
Yeah, got to do it,
You
man.
look good.
Got to do it.
God bless you, man. I wish you decades and decades of more playing soccer. And
Thank
stuff
you.
Like that.
Thank you.
And it sounds like you are actually living life in purpose right now.
Yes. Spot on, bro. I am way more relevant and have a purpose.
Yeah. I mean, you're glowing, bro. No homo, but you're glowing. I mean, you always, since that I met you, you always had that persona about you, right? Because
Yeah.
the second one I saw your Joe's podcast in Wise Nights, I'm
Yeah.
like, that's
Shout out to
Marlon.
Joe
Like,
and
yeah,
Armin.
shout out to you guys. I'm like, that's him for sure. And I never forgot you, bro. I had your number.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy was good. We connected.
Yes.
You're the same person, dude.
Yeah.
You're the same fucking person. Almost 10 years later, and
yeah.
now you just better. You sharper. You look better.
I'm
you don't
making
have
a
that
difference.
that department stress, and you're doing what you're
Yes.
loving, man.
Yes. It's my way of giving back. It's my way of staying in the game. And you know what? I think we owe it to the next generation. I mean, we're getting, I'm a little older than you, but we're getting older.
Yeah.
And, there's a young Alex out there, and there's a young Marlon that's out there that's going to get into this profession. And if I can tell you a little bit about this IA process, and the fucking Blue Falcons, there's Blue, they're out there.
dropped that
yeah,
term.
yeah.
You dropped that
There's a
term.
Blue Falcon. I always say that, and we have such humor with it. There's always a minimum of one
Oh yeah,
in every single department.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's more.
yeah. And usually those are the climbers.
Oh,
Like,
bro.
no matter what, I will climb.
Check this out. I was teaching out in San Diego, PD, and the crowd was kind of warming up. And I said that. I brought up and I said, hey, man, you know what happened next? Here comes the Blue Falcon, and I'm doing this. And these two dudes in the class were cracking up.
Oh, God, man.
So during break,
Yeah.
bro, they come up to me on their phone. They show me, and they were from some agency in the state of Washington. Seattle, like
Yeah,
outside of
yeah,
Seattle
yeah.
somewhere. And they show me, and they said they're in their building. They actually have a Blue Falcon taped outside the window in the building where the IA office is
Oh
at.
my God, dude! Wow, that's funny. That's ballsy.
He goes,
That's
bro,
ballsy.
when you said that,
Yeah.
I had to show you this picture. And then we just started laughing after that. We got drinks, and, you just meet the best of people, man. I love teaching. It's good
That's
stuff,
good, man.
man.
No, you seems like you enjoyed it, and it's your passion. And the reason why I have this, like I was telling, this is not for me to make money. I don't make any money. This costs me money.
Yeah.
But whenever I make episodes, right, whenever I invite my guests, right, whenever I make my episodes, I think about it like, well, I'm making this episode, like a solo coaching episode, whatever, to provide value. I'm assuming I talk to my son,
Yeah.
right? If something happens, like I never get to see my son grow up, right? I hope he goes back and he watches these episodes. I talk about masculinity. I talk about self-development. I talk about what it's like to be a man. I'm like, what value can I give? And when I bring on guests here, doesn't matter what you do. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a spark. Everybody has a purpose.
Yes.
And with that said, man, there's one question, two-part question I was always asked at the end of every episode to every guest, right?
Yes.
And I ask this with passion and purpose, right? Question is this, my friend. What do you think is the purpose of life? And knowing what you're going to answer, there are people out there like me and you, young cats, who haven't found their purpose or established their purpose. What can they do to establish, create, or find their purpose? So two parts.
God, very good question. I always felt like I didn't really think about it until I joined the Navy at 25. What I will say is that something happens to a man in their mid-20s. Something.
Yeah.
Like when you're like 24, 25 years old, you kind of like say to yourself, you know what?
Mhm.
I gotta fucking do something.
Mhm.
You gotta find it. I wasn't. I mean, I was a high school dropout, bro. All I wanted to do is fucking surf. I can go to clubs, work out, and and be out there, bro. That was me from 17 when I dropped out of high school all the way to 24. 7 years strong with my best friend. So my best friend is the one that got a ride along, and he goes, "Fuck, dude, this is fucking great job, bro." And that's when I decided to join the Navy because I needed to get my shit together,
Yeah.
you know. And so, interesting you bring that particular framing of what you're talking about purpose. Wow, it's deep because I always felt like I didn't have a purpose, uh, and I was just one of those. I was that outlier that didn't have a purpose whatsoever. And if it wasn't for my journey, what I've been through, neglect, uh, broken, uh, which I would never change it for the world, that along with uh, wanting to just wanting to be part of a team. I wanted structure, right? I always wanted consistency and structure. You will find your purpose somehow, some way, but it's going to happen. Not everybody in your mid 20s. So what I would do, what the best advice I can give you is that you know what, you're gonna fall, man. You're gonna go through the storm. The question is, can you get up and fucking ride through it, man? And those storms, somehow, some way, you're gonna find, be relevant and have a purpose in life. And law enforcement's not for everybody. That can be in any other profession, but just ride through the storm, man. You will, and I tell this to my daughter all the time. Conflict, I tell her, it's healthy. You learn a lot from having conflicted thoughts or uh, any interest in conflict. You're going to have a difference of opinion. Someone's going to bully you. Someone's going to talk shit about you. Someone's going to do it. But you know what? You'll sometimes you'll appreciate it more. I think what happens is that if you go through childhood or your journey in an awesome home, parents have always provided.
Mhm.
Dad's a doctor, mom is a
Silver
lawyer,
platter. Yeah.
and silver platter. Everybody's happy. Uh, you know what? Maybe, and again, I'm not passing judgment on that particular type of uh, journey of a child, but maybe you won't experience that much trauma or that much conflict, you know. But you do. You need the storm to give you purpose. How
Yeah.
about that?
I love that. Damn.
That's
You need the storm to find your purpose.
yeah,
Yeah.
you need it,
I
man.
love that.
Yeah,
That's good.
somehow, somewhere we all have.
Yeah.
And here's the deal: is that no one is, but I could never, fill my, your shoes. I wouldn't know what it's like to be a young kid in Russia. No any different. You wouldn't know what it's like to be a young kid in Peru. I mean, you and I can have a lot of in common in the sense that hey, we came to this country for the
Mhm.
better,
Mhm.
right? Which we did. I mean, look at us.
Yeah.
We have a
Blessed, man.
great. We wouldn't have had this. I know I wouldn't have had this in Peru, and I'm sure you wouldn't have had
No.
that in Russia. But my point is that journey, you know, um, you're giving yourself purpose, but you just don't know what it is, you know. And what I mean by that is, there's kids out there like perfect example would be Brazil, one of the most country that has an excess amount of poverty,
Oh yeah.
right? Isn't it like what $200-300 a month,
Mhm.
the average person? Those kids they're thinking not only do I just love fucking playing soccer, football, I love it. I'm passionate, but you know what? This is my purpose. This is my only way
Way
out.
out.
You know, that's having purpose. But see, you and I don't relate to stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I think the majority of us, especially when we have absent fathers, and come from broken pastures, right? Broken roads, if you will. I think you're reaching a point where you want purpose, but you know what? You got to ride that storm, and then you'll figure out what it is. So
I agree.
yeah, man.
Man, you gave an example as you walked through the whole journey.
Yeah.
That's deep right there.
I appreciate you
that.
asking, man. You know, I don't get to talk a lot about my upbringing, and I have before in the past, but it's good to always reflect. Yeah, and you don't do that until you actually get asked.
You can tell a lot about a man once you learn about their childhood because you can connect the dots.
Hmm.
You know, I did not know that part of you past, but that explains a lot to me about you, who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And you could do the same, you know, about me. So that matters. You can only
Yes.
connect the dots looking backwards, not forward.
Yeah, man.
So man, that journey that it makes sense, and I'm so happy that, and I will say that you are an outlier in the sense that you realize that, you know, maybe you're in 50s, right, or maybe, you know, I don't even think it's late, but you realize that what really matters is still here.
Yes.
I hold the pen to finish these last chapters of my life.
Correct.
Not the department, not the
No.
carrot, nobody, me.
Yeah.
And with that, man, I think, you know, the universe will give you abundance, bro.
Thank you,
Because
bro.
can get caught up in that cycle. And even for me, like transitioning like from one field to another,
Yes.
bro. Some people are like, what are you doing? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Job, the money, the benefits and that. Now
Yeah.
you're going to the unknown. Hey, man, it comes down to balls and faith, bro.
You know what? Yeah. The Lord is your savior, man.
Lord is a savior.
Yeah. God will always be there. He's watching over you.
Amen.
My mentor taught me this a long time ago, and it's so true. He said, Marlon, you know what? Faith has it that God does his best work through people. We are instruments.
Yeah.
He uses us.
Yep.
I tell that to my daughter a lot too. He uses us to test you, whether it's good or bad. I'm putting this person here in front of you. You know what? Okay, Alex, what are you going to do, bro? Are you going to fold? Are you going to be a bitch about this? Or are you going to be like, okay, cool, you know what? Yeah, these are tough decisions I got to make, and maybe I'm going to get better for this. So, you know, what's that old saying? All good things must be tested.
But that's true. That's true. Because if they haven't been, you don't appreciate
Then
them.
you don't appreciate them,
You don't
exactly.
appreciate it. Amen, brother. That's cold, but that's true.
Yeah.
That's cold, but that's true. And that's part of being a man.
Yeah.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom that comes from masculinity and trial and error.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately we've lost that. We've lost that fucking rite of passage, man.
Yeah.
And we need to bring that back.
Amen.
Because we growing up, we had that. And then that took it away. And I think because they took away the fathers, mothers don't teach you a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Mothers come with nurturing love and everything.
Yes.
Fathers are the
I
disciplinarians. Your other men around you, you have to earn your respect in the tribe and get to that rite of passage.
Yeah.
And I think in the rite of passage, like you said earlier, as you walk that journey, you find the purpose.
Yeah, you'll find it. You'll find it for sure.
Yeah.
I just need to know, when are you going to come to the studio, man, and tell your story?
Dude, man.
You're next.
I would love to, man. I would love to. I mean,
I
we're
would
having
love
a
to
great
have you.
conversation. I'd love to have you back here.
Yes.
Dude. Back here.
Whenever you want,
Before
man.
we shut down, dude,
Yes,
I'll
sir.
definitely go in yours, but
Yeah.
I would love to
Yeah.
and share my story there.
Mhm.
You ever just hear some fucked up Russian stories? You know, yeah, I got some for you. I want my public to know, because you provided a ton of value.
Yeah.
For a fact, I know that. So I want these guys to know, and I'll put all information on
Yes.
the drop down. Tell them how to find you.
Yes.
You know, the website, the channel, and all that, because
Yeah.
I want them to know, especially to the cops out there, to the young cops out there. And I'm going to create a clip that I'll be rerouting people to you to
Yeah.
know that you are a source that's available, because I didn't
Yes.
have that.
No.
You are now the source that thousands of officers out there need.
Yeah. No.
So let
there's-
them know where to find you, man.
Yeah, so on Instagram, the IA Guy, I think it's IA Guy Podcast for sure. That's where I do all my main content. But you got to go to the channel, YouTube channel, the IA Guy. You have to go there, subscribe, like, and all that stuff. You got tons of good stories, not just IA stories, good conversations with some really old school LAPD. You know, a lot of my, I want to say out of the 120 something guests, 80% of them have been LAPD.
Yeah, you got
because
some OGs
I got some
out there.
OGs
I met
in
'em,
there.
bro. Some good
And then the
officers.
bwclibrary.com. Go there if you're a cop. Listen, man, look, if you're working graves and you're sitting there going, you know what, today I want to watch a SOAS that happened outside like 15 to 25 feet with a taser. You're there. And if you want a breakdown, go in there and subscribe. And that's really, really good stuff. And then last but not least, I'm on LinkedIn also, right? Marlon, last name Marachi, Marrache. But YouTube and IG is where I'm at, man. So happy to be here, bro. I'm glad we connected. I rattled my mind so much going, I was telling my girlfriend, I said, dude, this guy Alex, dude, that's my boy, but I gotta know where.
Dude, I mean, I don't blame you, man. Trust me. Not. I'm first of all, I'm horrible with names.
Yeah.
I'm great with faces. Like
Uh-huh.
I will be a perfect witness to a crime 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Name, horrible.
Shout out to Joe and Armin, right?
John Army, yeah,
for,
yeah,
for the white. Yeah,
for
you hit me
reconnecting
up,
us,
and I'm
yeah.
like, oh shit,
Yeah,
kind of remember this dude, but where?
yeah. Hey, man. As long as you remember me, bro, that's all.
Yes,
I care.
yes.
Yeah, well,
thank you for having me, man.
Thanks,
I really,
thanks for being here. I
I really
appreciate it,
enjoyed
brother.
it.
Thank you, man.
Anytime.
Thank you.
You got it, bro.
Yeah.